Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Dawn Hacheney. Dawn Hacheney was born on December 5, 1969, in Seattle, Washington. Her parents are Donald Tihara and Diana Parle. Her father, Donald, worked at a shipyard, and her mother, Diana, ran the household. Dawn is the oldest child and only daughter, with 3 younger brothers, Dennis, Darren, and Derek. Her family lives in Bremerton, Washington. According to her mother Diana, Dawn showed her religious devotion from an early age, embracing her faith and accepting God into her life when she was 4 years old. Dawn's childhood was difficult, however. Her parents suffered from anxiety and depression, leading to frequent conflicts at home. Despite these challenges in her childhood, Dawn did well in school, promising herself to get good grades. At age 12, she entered the Scripps National Spelling Bee, an experience that not only led her to the White House but also gave her the opportunity to meet the late President Ronald Reagan. Dawn graduated from Bremerton Christian School as valedictorian in 1988 before attending Northwest College of the Church of God in Seattle. While in college, Dawn met Nick Hacheney and they quickly formed a strong bond. However, her friends were concerned when she started calling him the one after only a few dates. They wanted Dawn to find someone who would truly care for and support her, but they worried that Nick was too aggressive and self-assured, which didn't seem to fit Dawn's personality. Interestingly, Nick's upbringing has some similarities to Dawn's. Nick was born and raised in Poulsbo, a coastal city in Washington. His family life was difficult from an early age. His father, Dan, was constantly immersed in his work as a mechanic, always distant when at home, neglecting his time and responsibilities for the family. His mother, Sandra, ran a daycare in the home and provided foster care, but Nick felt abandoned. He often confided in friends that he felt less loved than his siblings and even his foster children, and that his mother's affection for him was distasteful. Life was difficult with a depressed mother and a father who often neglected the family. Nick felt abandoned and emotionally isolated. Despite this, he found comfort in the Bible and became deeply involved in Christianity. His faith gave him confidence throughout his adolescence. Nick and Dawn first met in college. At first, Dawn's friends were confused by her interest in Nick, whose personality was the complete opposite of hers. Over time, they noticed a significant change in Dawn's behavior. Normally, she was confident, outgoing, independent, motivated, and always striving to achieve new goals. However, when she was with Nick, her personality changed dramatically. She became shy, introverted, and indecisive, often putting Nick's interests above her own, even when they made her feel uncomfortable. It seemed that Nick's influence brought out the worst in her, rather than the best. Despite this, their love continued to grow and their relationship remained strong. In 1990, Nick proposed to Dawn on Alki Beach and they became engaged. They married on April 20, 1991, and then moved back to Bremerton. By this time, both Dawn and Nick had completed their education. Dawn began working as a loan officer, and Nick began his work as a youth pastor at Christ Community Church on Bainbridge Island, near Seattle. Nick had a desire to become a youth pastor, specifically targeting Christ Community Church due to his relationship with his former youth pastor, Bob, also known as P.B. Smith. At the time, P.B. Smith remained at the church, having overseen the church's affairs since the late 1980s, but now partnered with Pastor Robert Billy Craig to lead the congregation. P.B. Smith took a more friendly but conservative approach to church leadership, while Pastor Robert was known for his strict teachings. In their marriage, Nick made decisions without his wife Dawn, largely because they adhered to the principles of Christian fundamentalism. These principles dictate that the wife submit to the authority of her husband, which Nick and Dawn believed was in line with God's plan. At Christ Community Church, This ideology was clearly promoted and considered acceptable. The church even performed exorcisms for its members, encouraged large families as a divine mandate, and advocated homeschooling for children. Modesty in women was emphasized and questions about sexuality were taboo. Those who disagreed with these norms risked expulsion from the church, creating a climate of silence among dissenters for fear of expulsion. Dawn and her congregation are mired in what many call a cult, with her husband, Nick, playing a key role in these dangerous activities. Initially, Nick admires P.B. Smith, but he soon becomes dissatisfied with P.B. Smith's laid-back approach and feels he has not learned enough. He turns his admiration to Pastor Robert, who has a more extreme and strict approach. Nick seeks direct advice from Robert, distancing himself from his close relationship with P.B. Smith. In contrast, Pastor Robert sees Nick as an opportunity to advance his own agenda. He wants to remove P.B. Smith from his position as senior pastor and take control of the church. Robert's intentions are not sincere and he uses Nick to achieve his own goals. Meanwhile, Nick and his wife Dawn are facing challenges in their personal lives. They are constantly moving from house to house, renovating properties to sell. Dawn grew tired of this lifestyle and longed to settle down in a permanent home. By 1997, these issues were causing tension in their relationship. Nick found a house in need of repair in East Bremerton, planning to move in, renovate, and make it their home. However, the purchase, renovation, and home business plunged the couple into debt. Although their relationship seemed perfect, with Dawn seemingly a supportive wife who agreed with Nick's plans, there were underlying issues that were not immediately apparent. At the same time, Nick was getting into more debt by frequently lending money to people in their church. Nick embarked on his ambitious project of establishing a Christian youth camp. Despite financial difficulties, his passion for the project kept him going. He searched for the perfect location in Jefferson County, confident that he would find the ideal location. His determination intensified when a congregant, a woman named Sandy Glass, asserted receiving a divine vision affirming that the property Nick had his eye on was destined to become the site of the youth camp he envisioned. Sandy Glass, then in her early 20s, had faced hardships in her life. She had lost her first boyfriend to illness and her father in a construction accident. Her brother was addicted to drugs. Sandy was married to Jimmy, a carpenter, and they were struggling financially. A stay-at-home mother, Sandy depended on Jimmy's income, but her tendency to overspend often led to arguments between them. These disagreements sometimes caused Jimmy to scream or retreat, spending hours at the bar venting his frustrations. To resolve their marital problems, the couple sought help from the church and began attending marriage counseling sessions led by Nick, who had been the church's marriage counselor for many years. However, many parishioners filed complaints with Robert about Nick's counseling style, feeling uncomfortable with the way he prioritized intimate and often sexual topics over other important issues. Because of their trust in P.B. Smith, who was still affiliated with the church, members felt that Nick would not have been entrusted with the role if he were not trustworthy. However, in the fall of 1997, Pastor Robert took over as senior pastor, a move that was fully supported by the church council, replacing P.B. Smith. P.B. Smith and his wife then left to do missionary work in Africa. Jimmy's parents, who were also churchgoers, considered Sandy and Jimmy's decision to seek church intervention to be a hasty one. They even questioned Nick's qualifications and experience in guiding their son's marriage. Their concerns grew when they noticed that Nick focused a lot of his attention on Sandy, rather than Sandy and Jimmy as a couple. This attention was not limited to counseling sessions. Nick and Sandy spent a lot of time talking on the phone and meeting outside of church. Jimmy's parents felt that the relationship between Nick and Sandy was unacceptable. They spent a lot of time together and seemed closer than a normal counselor and client should be. Pastor Robert's wife, Pamela, also noticed Nick's behavior and spoke to him privately about it. She told him that he needed to focus on his marriage and that his actions were inappropriate. After much complaining, Pastor Robert stepped in and told Sandy that her relationship with Nick was not working and needed to end. Sandy was angry with Pastor Robert's advice because she believed that she and Nick had a special relationship with God. She wrote him a letter saying that his judgment made it difficult for her to think that he believed in her ability to listen to God and help others. The relationship between Sandy and Nick had a negative impact on those around them. Dawn and Jimmy, as well as Jimmy's children from his previous marriage to Sandy, felt hurt and betrayed. One of the children even told Jimmy that Nick and Sandy had discussed Nick becoming their new father after Jimmy's death. Dawn began sharing with friends at church about her financial difficulties and her desire to have children, a desire that Nick strongly opposed. As 1997 drew to a close, Nick had relationships with several women in addition to Sandy. He engaged in private conversations and lengthy phone calls with these women. At the same time, Sandy's alleged visions grew stronger, prompting Nick to prioritize the establishment of her youth camp and devote more time to their relationship, as she believed they were destined to be together. On the contrary, Dawn made a lot of effort to rekindle Nick's happiness with her, even trying to lose weight. Some of the women in the congregation supported her, telling her that the problems in their relationship were not her fault, but Nick's own. Unfortunately, Dawn's life with Nick did not turn out as she had hoped when they got married. When Christmas came, Dawn woke up feeling unwell with a cold. Despite being sick, she and Nick spent the day with their family. That evening, they visited P.B. Smith's house and spent time with his family. Nick had plans to go hunting with Lindsay, P.B. Smith's daughter, and her friends the next morning, the 26th. Nick met his friends at the Hood Canal Bridge in Jefferson County to go hunting just before dawn. They spent a few hours in the woods without shooting anything and decided to leave. Around 9 a.m., they went to a local diner for breakfast. While eating, Nick suddenly stood up, looking worried, and said, "Dawn and I haven't opened our Christmas presents yet." He left the diner at 9:30 a.m. and arrived home at 10 a.m. to find his wife dead in a fire. When police arrived on the scene, they discovered that the fire had initially started in the bedroom, due to a malfunctioning space heater. The fire quickly spread due to newspapers and wrapping paper in the room, and was made worse by multiple propane tanks on the floor. Nick told friends at the diner that he and his family had not opened their Christmas presents. But he told police a different story. According to Nick, they had actually opened their presents the night before. He said that Dawn had gone to bed feeling unwell and left the wrapping paper scattered around. Nick also confirmed that he had received a propane tank as a Christmas present. The couple was in the process of renovating their home and had used the heater to stay warm during the winter. However, these old fireplaces were not as safe as modern ones and often caused fires and deaths. The police found no inconsistencies in Nick's story. As a local pastor, Nick's status in the community gave the police no reason to suspect anything else. And his wife's death, which was ruled an accident. The congregation was concerned for Nick's health and wanted to support him during this difficult time. Pastor Robert even offered to try to revive Dawn through prayer, but Nick refused, saying he did not want her to suffer any potential pain. This refusal surprised Robert, as Nick had previously been willing to participate in church activities, including the exorcisms they had performed. Mary Glass, Sandy's mother-in-law, immediately suspected Nick of being involved in Dawn's death. Convinced that it was no accident, she urged her husband to report the situation to the police, but this never happened. Soon after, the police officially declared Dawn's death an accident and referred the case to Nick's insurance company. Nick began the process of collecting on Dawn's life insurance, which raised some suspicions from family and friends. They thought it was unusual for Nick to settle the insurance so quickly after Dawn's death, but they understood that the couple had significant debt and that Nick needed the money to pursue his plans for the youth camp. Some church members found Nick's way of grieving unusual, but they refrained from expressing concern, believing that everyone deals with grief differently. The church community came together to remember Dawn's life at her funeral. Family and friends shared stories and remembered her life. Although everyone was sad, Nick remained calm throughout and even gave a 45-minute speech in Dawn's honor. When friends helped him clean out his house, they found several photos of Dawn hidden in the back of a closet, making it seem as though he wanted to throw them away. After that, Nick's behavior became increasingly harsh and insensitive, not only toward some church members but also toward neighbors and friends. He had many romantic relationships with women in the congregation. In a shocking turn of events, Nick began an intimate relationship with Diana, Dawn's mother, under the guise of grief over his widowhood. His actions became too much for Pastor Robert to bear, and Nick was asked to leave Christ Community Church. This eviction had a significant impact on Nick, marking the beginning of his growing troubles. On April 10, 2001, Sandy and her attorney met with the district attorney. The district attorney offered Sandy immunity in exchange for her testimony about a secret she had kept since December 26, 1997. According to Sandy, on the morning of Dawn's death, Nick called her and said, "I did it." However, their conversation was abruptly interrupted by another incoming call on Sandy's phone, leaving Nick waiting to answer the call from someone at the church who had informed him of Dawn's case. After the second call ended, Sandy returned to the conversation with Nick and asked him to clarify what he meant. Nick simply repeated, "It's over, it's over." Sandy did not ask for further details about the call for several weeks. Eventually, Sandy confronted Nick, who confessed to giving Dawn an overdose of Benadryl and then suffocating her by placing a plastic bag over her face. Tragically, Dawn was still partially conscious and aware of what her husband was doing as she suffocated. After she died, Nick carefully placed old newspapers and wrapping paper around the room, including under her body, and placed propane tanks near the bed. He then turned on the heater to burn and start the fire, in an attempt to destroy any evidence of the crime and make it look like an accident. Dawn's autopsy revealed no soot or carbon monoxide in her lungs or blood. The pathologist who examined Dawn ruled her death an accidental fire. They missed crucial evidence of carbon monoxide binding to red blood cells, suggesting that she had not been breathing during the fire. Despite having 5 times the normal amount of Benadryl in her system, the pathologist concluded that the amount was not enough to cause respiratory failure, arguing that even if Dawn had been drowsy, she would have reacted to the increased temperature. Notably, crime scene photos showed newspapers under Dawn's body, a disturbing detail that was largely overlooked. A fire marshal became suspicious and spoke to the police, but he had no authority to decide whether Dawn's death was accidental. Nick was arrested on September 12, 2001, in the Kinko's parking lot. He adamantly denied any involvement in Dawn's death and claimed the church was trying to frame him. Despite his claims that church members could cause serious harm, Nick was charged with first-degree murder and his bail was set at $750,000. Sandy's account, when relayed to the police, added to the frustration. Over the nearly 4-year delay in considering Nick a suspect or making an arrest, and her reason for cooperating, stemming from anger over Nick's relationships with other women in the church. Church members reported Nick's strange behavior and inappropriate relationships when questioned. They were also upset that he did not buy a tombstone for Dawn after receiving the life insurance payout. On September 17, 2001, Nick pleaded not guilty in court. He claimed that the church had cursed him and that Pastor Robert had a dark influence beyond the understanding of the police. When Nick's trial began, Nick Hacheney was charged with aggravated first-degree murder, which carries a sentence of life in prison without parole. Witnesses, including women who were involved with Nick and church members who had been counseled by him, shared their testimonies with the jury. These testimonies showed the major impact the church had on their lives, including experiences of visions and messages supposedly from God. Nick used these to control and manipulate them. P.B. Smith's daughter also testified, sharing how she met Nick through her father when she was a teenager. Nick seduced her, and they had sex after Dawn's death. This continued until she moved away about a year later. Doctors and forensic experts also testified, emphasizing that Dawn's body held important clues regarding her death. However, these indicators were ignored, as mentioned earlier, because Nick was a pastor. However, on December 26, 2002, 5 years after Dawn's tragic death, the jury deliberated for a day before returning a guilty verdict on first-degree murder against Nick Hacheney. At his sentencing hearing on February 7, 2003, Nick addressed the court, which was filled with Dawn's loved ones. He continued to maintain his innocence, but also expressed remorse for his actions and sadness for his family's loss, saying that Dawn deserved better treatment. He was sentenced to life in prison. However, in 2007, an appeal to the state Supreme Court resulted in his life sentence being modified. The appeal argued that, because Dawn died as a result of Nick strangling her, the original charge of aggravated first-degree murder in connection with her death by arson did not match her actual cause of death. The defense argued that Nick therefore did not deserve a life sentence. Ultimately, the state Supreme Court ruled in favor of the appeal, changing Nick's sentence to 26 years in prison. While in prison, Nick was involved in many positive initiatives. He co-founded the Environmental Progress Reentry Network and introduced a waste management system that used vermicompost. Nick could be released from prison soon, as he is eligible for parole in 2025. Sadly, Dawn's life took a tragic turn. She thought she had found the right person, but the reality was very different. This led to a devastating betrayal and her heartbreaking death. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Rachel Anderson. Rachel Anderson was born on January 28, 1994, in Warren, Ohio, to William Bill Anderson and Patricia Trish Anderson. She had a younger brother, John, who was a common family favorite. Rachel graduated from Warren Harding High School in 2012, where she was a member of the National Honor Society and excelled in soccer and volleyball. Unlike many of her peers, Rachel pursued an unconventional career. From a young age, she aspired to become a funeral director. To achieve her goal, she attended Youngstown State University, where she studied mortuary science. Her dedication earned her a spot on the list of top students, and she received a scholarship. Rachel later furthered her education at Cincinnati College of Mortuary Science, graduating in 2016 with a bachelor's degree in mortuary science. After becoming a member of the Ohio Funeral Directors Association, Rachel moved to Columbus to start her internship at Shaw Davis Funeral Home. She was deeply respectful of her work and felt a strong sense of duty to support grieving families. With her internship nearing its end, she hoped to secure a full-time position at the funeral home. However, her dreams and ambitions were tragically extinguished. Rachel's body was then sent to the morgue for a more thorough examination. The investigation began with interviews of key witnesses, and an autopsy was conducted to analyze the full extent of Rachel's severe injuries. The results showed that she had been strangled and stabbed. Specifically, she had a scalp laceration and skull fractures at the base of her head. The stab wound, located at the back of her neck, penetrated deep into her brain, damaging the left hemisphere. Rachel was killed with extreme force, as seen in the autopsy results where part of her skull was broken off. The autopsy also showed she was strangled using an electric blanket cord, which led to severe internal bleeding in her neck and chest area, as well as in her eyelids. Furthermore, The blood vessels in her eyes became filled with blood due to the strangulation. Additional forensic evidence indicated that Rachel was alive when the perpetrator restrained her, shown by bruises and red marks on her wrists and ankles. A DNA sample was discovered on the rope used to restrain Rachel and on her body. The coroner's autopsy results concluded that Rachel's death was ultimately caused by a stab wound to the head and neck, rather than strangulation as initially thought. The police interviewed several co-workers and Rachel's ex-boyfriend, who had an alibi for the time of the murder. Detectives returned to Rachel's apartment to conduct a search for evidence or clues that could lead them to the culprit. In the living room, the police discovered Rachel's purse, but it was missing her wallet. This led them to initially suspect a robbery. However, 2 weeks later, a crucial piece of evidence was found: a 9-inch steak knife used in the crime. It was discovered by Rachel's mother in a box in her apartment. However, the severity of the torture suggested that the perpetrator was not just a common thief, but rather someone who carefully planned their actions and took pleasure in having control over the victim. During the investigation, detectives explored various motives behind Rachel's death but struggled to identify suspects. The details of her death were kept under wraps to maintain the investigation's secrecy and prevent tipping off the perpetrator. The discovery of DNA evidence on Rachel's body and at the crime scene initially brought new hope to the investigation. However, it was ultimately unsuccessful since the DNA samples did not match any profiles in the existing database. A new clue emerged when investigators obtained video footage from street surveillance cameras. The footage showed 2 individuals using Rachel's car to drive around the city after her murder, and it was also discovered that cash had been withdrawn from her debit and credit cards. A further investigation using location services revealed a phone number that was in house Rachel's on January 28, 2018, between 7:59 p.m. and 9:25 p.m. By analyzing this evidence, authorities were able to track the location of the suspect. The investigation led to identifying the account holder linked to the phone number, ultimately revealing the suspect. The suspect was identified as 54 years old Anthony Pardon, an offender with a long history of serious crime, including multiple rapes, robbery, kidnapping, and attempted murder. Anthony had previously spent a total of 33 years in prison for these crimes. Anthony's early life was troubled. Initially, he living with grandparents, he moved to live with his mother. As a child, he received diagnoses of conduct disorder and antisocial personality disorder. In March 1979, at the age of 14, he was temporarily committed to the Ohio Youth Commission. Later that year, in July, he was placed in the custody of the court and temporarily transferred to Franklin County Children's Services. In December, Anthony was convicted of making threats and subsequently transferred to the Ohio Youth Commission, where he was placed in foster care. The following year, in 1980, Anthony, then 15 years old, was charged with abuse after assaulting the son of his foster parents. He confessed to the police that he committed the crime due to being emotionally distressed following a heated argument with his girlfriend. In another incident on November 13, 1981, 16 years old Anthony was convicted of several crimes. He had entered his girlfriend's 39 years old mother's home to use the phone, but he pulled out a butcher knife, sexually assaulted her, and stole $100 from her purse. He then gagged she, tied her hands and feet, and placed her in the trunk of his car. Anthony drove her to Valleydale, where he untied her feet and attempted to drown her in a river behind the Valleydale ballroom. However, the woman managed to stay afloat. He then got into the water and held her head underwater, but a passerby intervened and scared him away. The woman survived the assault. Anthony escaped before the police arrived and used the stolen money to purchase tennis shoes and jogging uniforms. In May 1982, in Franklin, Anthony was convicted of various crimes at the age of 17. As a result, he received a prison sentence ranging from 5 to 25 years. During his time in prison, he committed several disciplinary offenses, including possession of a prohibited weapon, setting fire to a mattress, and engaging in physical altercations. He ultimately spent over 24 years behind bars, then being released in November 2006. After his release, Anthony moved to Georgia and applied for a job under a false name. However, his freedom was short-lived. In 2007, he was charged with forgery in Floyd County and received another conviction. This led to a 9-year prison sentence, followed by 20 years of probation and the requirement to wear a GPS ankle monitor. He was released from prison in 2017 and returned to Ohio in June of that year, through an interstate agreement. Upon his return to Ohio, Anthony was placed under the supervision of the Adult Parole Authority and was required to check in with the local sheriff's department every 90 days. Unfortunately, due to budget constraints and negligence on the part of state authorities, he was able to roam free once again without adequate oversight. On August 21, 2017, he was found with "lock up a woman" in his car. 6 days later, he was stopped for driving without a license and was discovered to be in possession of a kitchen knife and a shotgun. Despite these incidents, he was not taken into custody. The investigation into Rachel's case continued to unfold. Security footage revealed a man getting out of Rachel's car and entering a store, while the driver remained out of sight. Police interviewed store employees and eventually identified the man as Anthony Sleets, a local homeless man. Sleets was questioned by police a couple of days later. He claimed that an older man approached him and asked for his help in cashing in his ex-girlfriend's cards. Sleets agreed, becoming an accomplice in the case. During questioning, he confirmed that the older man was Anthony Pardon and provided details of their actions on the evening of January 28, 2018, when they attempted to use Rachel's stolen cards. The next step was to find and apprehend Anthony Pardon. After several days of surveillance on Anthony's sister's house, he was finally caught on February 9, 2018. Anthony, 54 years old, with a history of offenses, was charged with 9 counts, including burglary, aggravated robbery, kidnapping, rape, and murder. The trial of Rachel Anderson's case began on February 4, 2020. On the first day, 4 witnesses took the stand, including Jonathan Kennedy, who discovered Rachel's body, and the apartment complex manager. Officer Frank Ghani also testified, describing what he saw from his car outside the complex and the surveillance footage he witnessed. Jonathan found Rachel's body, and Officer Ghani was nearby. Over the next few days, additional witnesses testified, including Anderson's brother John, Special Agent Joshua Durst on February 5, and lead detective Art Hughes on February 6. The defendant, Anthony Pardon, expressed dissatisfaction with his lawyers on February 6 and requested new lawyers. However, this was likely a delaying tactic court session by he. On February 10, the prosecution presented expert witnesses, including a latent print expert. He explained the technology used to track Rachel's debit card usage and its connection to the crime scene. Anthony's sister later took the stand and revealed that her younger brother had given her a debit card, claiming it belonged to his girlfriend. After watching a TV news report, she realized the card actually belonged to the victim, Rachel Anderson. The final day of testimony, February 11, featured crucial evidence. The medical examiner testified that Anthony's DNA was found at the crime scene. A forensic pathologist and deputy coroner from Franklin County gave detailed accounts of Rachel's injuries. Through the various testimonies, the court was provided with a detailed account of Rachel's final days. On January 26, 2018, Rachel turned 24 years old. Her brother John traveled from Warren to Columbus to celebrate with her. The following day, Rachel and her brother visited their friend, John Kennedy, where a birthday party was held in her congratulations. After the party, she and her brother spent the night at Kennedy's house. The next day, January 28, Rachel went to work, leaving the key to her apartment with her brother. However, when John returned to his hometown, he unintentionally took the key with him. Later that afternoon, around 1 o'clock, Rachel sent a text to Kennedy, asking to pick up his spare key to her apartment. Rachel spoke with her mother around 6:30 in the evening and then retrieved her key from Kennedy. After stopping for dinner, Rachel returned to her apartment at approximately 7:30 p.m. As her apartment door could only be locked from the outside with a key, it was left unlocked. Anthony abducted Anderson inside the apartment building. He took her to the top floor, where he violently restrained her using the cord from a hair dryer to tie her feet and ankles, and a belt along with blind cords to bind her hands. Once Rachel was unable to move, Anthony used a curling iron cord to restrict her wrists and prevent her from screaming. He also gagged her to further silence her. Under duress, Rachel was forced to reveal her bank card PIN numbers to her attacker. He then subjected her to torture and took advantage of her. The attack resulted in Anderson's death when he used a cord from an electric blanket to strangle them. In addition, she suffered blunt force trauma and a stab wound to the head. After committing the crime, Anthony carefully concealed Rachel's body in a closet. He left her partially naked, with the electric blanket cord wrapped around her neck and tied to the door handle. Anthony then proceeded to steal Rachel's car and used her bank cards to make multiple purchases at various stores in Columbus. The defense presented no witnesses during the trial. The final hearing took place on February 12. Assistant Prosecutor Amy Van Killen presented the state's initial argument, outlining a chronological sequence of incident and asserting to the jury that Anthony intentionally murdered Rachel brutally. In his argument, Anthony's attorney, Larry Thomas, acknowledged that his client used Rachel's credit cards but disputed Anthony's involvement in the crime. Larry argued that the prosecution's case relied on speculation and the DNA and cell phone evidence failed to prove Anthony's guilt. After roughly 6 hours of deliberation, the jury, composed of 4 men and 8 women, finding Anthony guilty on all charges. The prosecution sought the death penalty, pointing to the serious nature of the burglary and the defendant's previous conviction for a similar crime that involved attempting to kill a woman. Due to Anthony's extensive history of criminal behavior, prosecutors requested the death penalty instead of leniency. According to Prosecutor O'Brien, certain individuals consistently disregard the law, and Anthony pardon is a prime example. The sentencing phase commenced on February 18. In an effort to reduce the severity of the sentence, the defense highlighted Anthony's troubled childhood as a mitigating factor. However, prosecutors countered that the aggravating circumstances outweighed any mitigating factors. During the trial, it was established that Anthony was fully aware of his actions when he attacked Rachel. Despite this, several people testified in his defense, including his mother, sister, a psychologist, and his former elementary school teacher. Anthony gave an impromptu 13-minute statement to the jury. During this time, he discussed the abuse he suffered in his childhood and the hardships he faced after being released from prison, expressing feelings of helplessness. Anthony claimed that the justice system had failed him and that he received no support, ultimately blaming the system for his current circumstances. However, Anthony did not directly address the crime he committed or offer an apology for his actions. After 3.5 hours of deliberation, the jury sentenced Anthony to life imprisonment without parole. The sentencing took place on March 16, 2020. Rachel's mother was visibly emotional in court as the verdict was announced. Rachel's father felt shocked that Anthony is blaming the system for his actions, rather than taking responsibility for what happened. He acknowledged that the system does have its flaws, but in this case, it was Rachel who was ultimately let down. Judge McIntosh delivered the verdict, sentencing Anthony pardon to life sentences without parole for aggravated murder and violence. Additionally, Anthony received 63 years in prison for various other charges, including aggravated burglary, kidnapping, and aggravated robbery. Rachel's life was tragically cut short when she passed away on her 24th birthday. At the time of her death, she was nearing the end of her internship and was close to securing a promising job. Rachel was laid to rest at Pine View Memorial Park, leaving behind her family and friends were left to cope with the unexpected and devastating loss. Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Jennifer Dulos. Jennifer Dulos was born in 1968 in New York. Her father is Hillard Farber, a banker, and her mother is Gloria Tenenberg, a philanthropist. Jennifer has an older sister, Melissa Irene Farber. Jennifer graduated from Brown University in 1990 and later earned a master's degree in creative writing from New York University's Tisch School of the Arts. Jennifer is married to Fotis and they have 5 children together, all named after Greek Orthodox saints, 3 sons, Petros, Theodore, and Constantine, and 2 daughters, Christiane and Cleopatra. Jennifer and Fotis were married for 13 years before ending their marriage in 2017. After that, Jennifer began to feel afraid of her ex-husband. Which makes us wonder, who is Fotis and what changed him? Fotis Dulos was born on August 6, 1967, in Turkey. He grew up in Athens, Greece, and moved to the United States in 1986. He attended Brown University, graduating in 1989. Fotis then went on to earn a master's degree in finance from Columbia Business School. Fotis met his first wife, Hilary Vanessa Alama, at Brown University and married her in Athens in 2000. After their divorce in 2004, he moved to Connecticut and married Jennifer a month later, despite having known her since he was married to Hilary. They moved to Farmington and had 5 children. The marriage of Jennifer and Fotis began to crumble in 2012 and completely collapsed in 2017. Jennifer shared her marital struggles in a blog post in March 2012. She expressed her wish to be stronger to face conflicts without fear. In 2017, Jennifer decided to file for divorce. The reason was that Fotis had an affair with Michelle Troconis, a Venezuelan colleague. Jennifer also requested custody of the 5 children, but the court only granted joint custody. Jennifer feared for her safety and that of her children. She accused Fotis of unsafe behavior, bullying, intimidation, and excessive control. She recounted an incident with Fotis on June 3, 2017. When Fotis learned that she had made plans for the children on Saturday morning, he became angry and lost control. Jennifer said Fotis became angry and agitated, causing her to run upstairs to get away from him. However, Fotis chased her upstairs. Despite Jennifer locking and bolting the door, Fotis continued to verbally and physically abuse and threaten her, leaving her feeling trapped and helpless. Jennifer felt unsafe around her husband. When she decided to file for divorce, the situation became even more dangerous. In an interview, Jennifer shared that she was very afraid of Fotis. She realized that her desire for a divorce had deeply angered Fotis, and she feared that he might retaliate by causing her harm. Jennifer revealed that when she filed for divorce in May 2017, Fotis threatened to kidnap and harm their children if she did not accept his divorce terms. Fotis even purchased a gun that year. In 2018, Jennifer filed for emergency custody of the children. During the trial, the court found that Fotis had violated multiple court orders. Finally, Jennifer was awarded primary custody of the children. Fotis was only allowed supervised visits and phone calls were monitored. Jennifer and the children moved to a rented house in New Canaan, 70 miles from Fotis's home. Fotis was devastated by Jennifer's allegations. In an email to her in 2017, he expressed concern for the children's well-being. He realized that the children needed both parents, not just one. Fotis pleaded with Jennifer to reconsider their marriage for the sake of the children. He even suggested that they could live as partners and learn to accept each other. While denying Jennifer's allegations, Fotis counterclaimed that she had turned the children against him. He claimed that Jennifer called him a psychopath and told the children that he did not care about them. Fotis also claimed that Jennifer bragged about dragging out the divorce for 2 years so she could hire the mafia to break his legs. Fotis denied threatening to kidnap his child and explained that he bought the gun to protect his home. However, Fotis's argument not be credible given the events that followed. Jennifer was last seen at around 8:05 a.m. on May 24, 2019, after dropping her child off at school in New Canaan. She had 2 doctor's appointments in New York at 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. When Jennifer failed to show up for these appointments, which she never missed, her friends reported her missing to the police. Lauren Almeida, Jennifer's live-in nanny, also noticed something unusual. When she arrived at Jennifer's apartment at 11:30 a.m., she found the Range Rover in the garage, while Jennifer's Chevrolet Suburban was missing. However, Lauren did not notify the police until 7 p.m. Jennifer's prolonged and unusual absence, along with her failure to notify anyone of her departure, raised serious concerns for her safety. After receiving disturbing reports, the police investigated and searched Jennifer's New Canaan home. The results of the search shocked everyone who cared about Jennifer. They found blood stains in the garage, on the walls, on the doors, and on the outside of the Range Rover. Inside the home, there were scattered blood stains in the kitchen, and most notably, blood from both Jennifer and her husband, Fotis. This discovery raised suspicions that Fotis may have murdered his wife. The police investigation found that Fotis was present at Jennifer's home on the day she went missing. Police found bicycle tracks around the house, indicating that Fotis had arrived there on a bicycle. According to the police theory, Fotis stalked and waited for Jennifer to return from dropping off her children at school. He then brutally murdered her, cleaned up the scene, and destroyed the evidence. A neighbor's security camera recorded a Chevrolet Suburban leaving Jennifer's home at 10:25 a.m. Police believe Fotis was the driver of the vehicle. Police alleged that Fotis hid Jennifer's body along with items used to clean up the crime scene in his vehicle. He then abandoned the vehicle about 3 miles from the town of New Canaan. Based on these suspicious actions, police believe Fotis was the perpetrator of Jennifer's death and a ruthless killer. At around 7:30 p.m. that night, security cameras recorded Fotis and his girlfriend Michelle taking out the trash. Notably, they used up to 30 different garbage bags along Alfred Avenue in Hartford. When police searched the garbage bags, they found several suspicious items in the trash bags, including toiletries, bloody clothing, and used gloves. Blood on the clothing matched Jennifer, while Fotis' DNA was found on a glove and a garbage bag. These findings confirmed police's initial suspicions that Fotis was involved in Jennifer's disappearance. The case of Fotis murdering his wife was shocking, but what was even more shocking was the involvement of his girlfriend, Michelle Troconis. Michelle, a Venezuelan woman, had many roles in her life: mother, equestrian athlete, and former ESPN reporter in South America. However, no one expected her to become an accomplice in a murder. Michelle began a relationship with Fotis while he was still married to Jennifer, contributing to the breakdown of their marriage. After Jennifer went missing, the police questioned Michelle. When asked about her whereabouts on the day Jennifer disappeared, Michelle said she had lunch with Fotis and then went with him to one of Fotis' properties to clean up in preparation for a meeting with a client. However, the police suspected that this cleaning was actually to erase traces related to Jennifer's death. On the morning of May 24, 2019, Fotis stole a Toyota Tacoma truck from an employee and drove it to New Canaan, Connecticut. A school bus camera captured the truck traveling at high speed toward Waveney Park at 7:05 a.m. Jennifer's Chevrolet Suburban was later found in the park. Police found a bicycle tire in the trunk of the truck, supporting the theory that Fotis rode his bicycle approximately 3 miles from Wavani Park to Jennifer's New Canaan home. Police believe Fotis arrived at Jennifer's home before she left. When Jennifer arrived at the garage, Fotis attacked her. He then covered up the evidence. Fotis put Jennifer's body in her Chevrolet Suburban and drove to Wavani Park, where he transferred Jennifer's body to his truck. Despite Fotis's efforts to cover up his tracks, he left behind 2 key pieces of evidence at his new home in Canaan: his DNA on the doorknob and a mixture of his and Jennifer's blood on the kitchen faucet. Police believe Fotis spent hours cleaning the house. This was reinforced by neighbor surveillance footage that showed Jennifer's Chevrolet Suburban leaving the house around 11 p.m. Police were even more convinced of Fotis's guilt when he acted suspiciously 5 days after his wife's disappearance. Fotis drove away again in the truck without permission. This time, his destination confirmed police's suspicions. He drove straight to a local car wash and detail shop. Surveillance video captured a black SUV driven by Michelle following the truck. In the video, Fotis is seen stopping at a car wash, then getting into Michelle's SUV. Police suspect their intent was to remove evidence from the vehicle. However, this attempt failed when Jennifer's DNA was discovered by police on the passenger seat of the truck. Fotis became the prime suspect in Jennifer's disappearance due to the substantial evidence against him. On June 7, 2020, Fotis was arrested and charged with murder and kidnapping in connection with Jennifer's case. This was the first time he had been charged with these crimes, although the incident had occurred earlier. Fotis and Michelle were arrested on June 1, 2019, at a hotel in Anson, Connecticut. However, they were only charged with obstructing prosecution and tampering with evidence, not murder. This is because at the time, the police did not have enough evidence to charge them with the murder. While many may think that Fotis should have been arrested earlier on more serious charges, this only happened after the police gathered more evidence. Both Fotis and Michelle pleaded not guilty. Fotis hired attorney Norm Pattis to defend him. Norm was convinced that Jennifer was dead. Initially, Fotis and Michelle were released. However, in September 2019, they were arrested again on charges of tampering with evidence and obstructing justice. In October 2019, Fotis appeared in court to contest the charges against him. The judge said he would carefully review the case, listening to arguments from both the prosecution and the defense. During this time, Jennifer and Fotis's 5 children lived with their grandmother. The children's grandmother was granted temporary custody by the court. In January 2020, Fotis was arrested and charged with murdering his ex-wife in a Waterloo courtroom. At the same time, his girlfriend, Michelle, was also arrested for attempted murder. After his arrest, Michelle distanced herself from Fotis. In an interview, she admitted that she had made a big mistake in trusting Fotis. Before the incident, Michelle reportedly moved out of Fotis' $5 million home in Farmington with her daughter. Kent Douglas Mawhinney, a former lawyer and friend of Fotis, was also arrested and charged with attempted murder. Police aggressively arrested him. They believe Kent helped Fotis and Michelle create an alibi for the morning of Jennifer's disappearance. During the same period, Kent also faced charges of rape against his wife. He was divorced from his wife, and the situation became even more tense after he was arrested in connection with Jennifer's case. Kent's wife felt her life was in serious danger. Kent's wife reported to the South Windsor Police Department that her husband was plotting to kill her with the help of Fotis. During the investigation, police discovered that Kent was a member of the East Granby Gun Club, a local hunting group. Police were notified that a human grave had been found on land associated with the club. After searching the property, police made a suspicious discovery: a shallow grave on the secluded property. Police found 2 bags of lime and a blue tarp in the grave. But no body. They suspect that someone had dug up the grave. Although the suspects have been arrested, Jennifer's body has not been found. Her family is devastated. Although justice is imminent for their daughter, they acknowledge that arresting Jennifer's killer will not bring her back, so the family's grief will never be completely gone. Fotis was set on $6 million bail on January 8, 2020. He was released the following day, but is due back in court on February 8, 2020. Michelle was also released on bail. Kent was initially set on $2 million bail, but it was later reduced to more than $200,000. He was released on bail on October 19, 2020. After Fotis's heinous acts began to be discovered, he became extremely fearful. On January 28, 2020, Fotis failed to appear at an emergency hearing, prompting the judge to issue a warrant for his arrest. When police arrived at Fotis's Farmington home to serve the warrant, they found him unconscious in his car, unable to face the consequences of his actions. Fotis attempted suicide by inhaling carbon monoxide. He connected the SUV's exhaust pipe to a vacuum cleaner and placed it inside his car. Police performed CPR and restored his weak heartbeat. He was then taken by ambulance to Yukon Medical Center, then transferred to Jacob Medical Center in the Bronx for hyperbaric oxygen therapy. While in the hospital, Fotis' children, who were living with their grandmother, visited him for the first time since he was charged with Jennifer's murder. Police found a suicide note in Fotis's car. In it, he wrote that he could not bear to spend even 1 hour in jail for a crime he knew nothing about. On January 30, 2020, Jacobs Medical Center confirmed Fotis' death. Police later released a report that included information from Anna Curry, Fotis' last girlfriend. Anna said she was with Fotis on the day of the emergency hearing. According to Anna, she and Fotis planned to drive to court together, but finally Fotis suggested they go separately. Anna admitted that she was panicked and she received a call from Fotis's lawyer asking about Fotis's absence from court. Anna was driving at the time and responded that Fotis was supposed to be there. The attorney said the GPS device showed that Fotis was still at his home in Farmington. Anna immediately realized that Fotis might have harmed himself and asked the attorney to call 911. After Fotis' death, the murder charges against him were dismissed on March 3, 2020. The judge ordered the prosecutor to apply null prosequi, abandonment of prosecution. This does not mean that Fotis is acquitted, but simply that the case cannot proceed due to his death. Abandonment of prosecution acknowledges this fact, but gives the prosecutor 1 year to reopen the case if he wishes. Otherwise, the case will be dismissed permanently. During the hearing, Fotis' attorney Norm Pattis wanted to clear his client's name. He claimed that Fotis was framed and argued that the framer had dumped bloody clothes and incriminating evidence in front of Fotis's house. Norm explained that if Fotis was the perpetrator, he would not have accidentally dumped these items, leading to the police discovering them on surveillance cameras. Norm asked for the Fotis estate to be substituted as a defendant, but the request was not considered. Michelle is under house arrest after being charged with conspiracy to murder Jennifer. Michelle's attorney, John Sean, admitted in an interview that his client's case has not progressed. Michelle was scheduled to appear in court on August 6, 2020, while Kent Douglas Mawhinney was scheduled to appear in court on June 2, 2020. Both have pleaded not guilty to the charges. In an interview, Michelle responded to those who judge her without knowing her well. She admitted that she can be wrong about others, but she cannot say whether Fotis killed his wife. However, she believes that believing Fotis was a waste of time, and this has been proven true. For years after Jennifer went missing, she has still not been found. Police searched for her body in several locations over the years. In 2019, they began searching Wavani Park, 3 miles from New Canaan. They used dogs and a helicopter to thoroughly search the area. The search for Jennifer expanded beyond the initial area, including New York City, where the family owned property. After a thorough search there, police turned their attention to central Connecticut. In Hartford, police discovered surveillance footage showing Fotis dumping trash bags in various dumpsters around the city. This led to a weeks-long search of the waste treatment plant, where police found key evidence. The search continued at a fishing pond in Avon that the Dullos family frequented. Police also searched properties owned by Jennifer's husband's company in central Connecticut, with an estimated 3,000 acres searched. However, despite extensive search efforts, Jennifer has not been found. In August 2021, the investigation led police to a Farmington home on Mountain Spring Road that was associated with Jennifer's husband. Police decided to search the home to follow up on previous leads. They invited Bob Perry, a well-known expert in finding unmarked graves, to join the search. Police also brought in septic tank pumping equipment and an excavator to increase the effectiveness of the search. However, to date, police have not released any information about the discovery of Jennifer's body. Although the tragedy of Jennifer was heartbreaking, it did lead to a positive outcome. In May 2021, the Connecticut Senate passed a landmark domestic violence bill. The bill was named after Jennifer and Jennifer Magnano, two victims of domestic violence. The bill received near-unanimous support from members of the Senate. Governor Ned Lamont signed the bill into law on June 28, 2021. Jennifer's family is still deeply saddened by her passing. In a recent interview, a family spokesperson expressed their deep sorrow for Jennifer. He emphasized that her wonderful personality and optimistic spirit left a deep impression, causing even those who never met Jennifer to feel heartbroken by her disappearance. Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Greg Mulvihill. Greg Mulvihill and Diana met on a dating website in 2005. Both living far from their families, they decided to move to San Diego together. Diana had been passionate about fitness since she was young, playing sports in high school and eventually becoming a triathlete as an adult. Their love of the outdoors and fitness brought them closer together. 2000s, Diana and Greg both were highly skilled professionals and achieved great success in their careers. Diana was considered extremely trustworthy by her peers. Diana and Greg first met in 2005, and 2 years later, they decided to get married, marking the beginning of their new life together. They chose Costa Rica for their honeymoon, where they had the opportunity to learn to surf. In the early days of their marriage, they made the most of their time together, experiencing many exciting adventures together. After their wedding, Diana and Greg moved to Carlsbad, a suburb north of San Diego. The area has a mix of lagoons, hiking trails, hills, and secluded spots. Diana was immediately drawn to the area. She enjoyed the quiet atmosphere and the beautiful scenery around her. 3 years after their wedding, Diana was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, a chronic condition that affects millions of people worldwide. Fibromyalgia is characterized by pain and tenderness throughout the body. While the exact cause of fibromyalgia is unknown, there are a number of factors that may contribute to the condition. To help her cope with her fibromyalgia, Greg took her on a relaxing vacation to Santa Cruz, California in 2011. Greg was a caring husband who understood the impact fibromyalgia had on Diana's life. The condition caused constant muscle pain, fatigue, and limited her energy, making it difficult for her to maintain a job. Diana's ongoing health struggles eventually led her to give up her career. With more time at home, she longed to become a mother. Diana and Greg tried for years to have children. But Diana suffered multiple miscarriages. The loss of these pregnancies affected Diana, both physically and emotionally. Although Diana did not have children, she had 2 cats, Lanny and Turtle, whom she loved dearly. One day, turtle became ill and passed away. To help Diana through this, Greg adopted a kitten for her, whom she named Taffy. Greg's gift helped Diana greatly. After years of trying to conceive without success, Diana was shocked to discover that she was pregnant. Greg was overjoyed and eager to become a father. Diana shared the same sentiment, feeling that her dream of becoming a mother was slowly coming true. In September 2012, Diana gave birth to a baby boy. After the baby was born, Greg took time off work to care for his newborn son. He was very happy and cherished every moment with his son. Diana, on the other hand, was worried about her son's health, wanting him to be happy and healthy. Over time, Diana began to suspect that her son might have a condition similar to her fibromyalgia. However, Greg believed that their son was healthy. Despite their differing opinions, Diana remained convinced that their son had the disease. Diana began extensive research and discovered guaifenesin, a drug commonly used to treat chest infections. Some believe that guaifenesin can help relieve the symptoms of fibromyalgia, leading Diana to consider giving her son a high dose of the drug. However, Greg was against giving his son the drug. The disagreements between Diana and Greg over how to care for their son added to the tension and pressure in their marriage. When Greg injured his shoulder and lost his job, tensions escalated. With her income reduced, Diana sought a sales position to supplement the family income. She also tried to generate income through online cooking videos, with Greg helping behind the camera, but the project failed. Diana then made promotional videos featuring cat litter, but these also failed to bring in the desired financial returns. When their son turned 2, the constant arguments and disagreements between Diana and Greg over their son's health issues continued to cause tension. They found themselves unable to find common ground. Diana confided in a coworker about her feelings of frustration and lack of support from Greg, revealing a deep rift between them. In July 2014, police questioned Greg about Diana's allegations of abuse. According to police, Diana filed several police reports regarding Greg's actions. As a result of these accusations, Greg was evicted from the home, while Diana and their son were allowed to stay. Diana confided in a friend about Greg's abuse, saying that the incident occurred while she was sleeping. According to Diana, her medication made her drowsy, and when she woke up, she found Greg touching her without her consent. Additionally, Diana accused Greg of sexually abusing their son. These allegations led to the involvement of Child Protective Services. Greg denied the allegations, believing that Diana fabricated the complaints because he disagreed with her about their son's health status. In response, Greg filed for divorce and sought custody of their son. The police searched for evidence to support claims of abuse against Greg and his son. Ultimately, a judge ordered both Greg and the boy to undergo psychiatric evaluations. After an investigation, the evaluations found no evidence of child abuse by Greg. Additionally, the police found no evidence that Greg had assaulted Diana. As a result, the charges against Greg were dropped and he was given custody of their son, a decision that upset Diana. In a subsequent settlement, Diana agreed to live in their home and compensate Greg for his share of the property. On September 1, 2016, the Carlsbad Police Department received a call from Jason Kovac, a close friend of Greg's. Jason reported that Greg had been shot multiple times and was losing a lot of blood. At the time Jason called 911, a Carlsbad police patrol officer was nearby. When they arrived, the officer found Jason and Greg on the side of the road. Jason explained to the officer that the shooting had occurred about a half-mile away from their current location. The officer quickly realized that waiting for an ambulance would put Greg's life in greater danger. In order to get Greg to the emergency room as soon as possible, the officer placed Greg in the back of his car and took him to the hospital. Meanwhile, just minutes later the officer had surrounded the area and began searching for the shooter. Despite their best efforts, they were unable to locate the shooter. At the hospital, doctors immediately rushed Greg into emergency surgery, where they discovered he had a gunshot wound to the chest. Greg survived the surgery. However, he was placed on life support and was expected to regain consciousness on his own. The police spoke to Jason about the incident. Jason, willing to share what he knew, explained that Greg had called the night of the incident. He told Jason that he had received a call from a private investigator who said to have important information for his upcoming divorce and custody battle with Diana. The anonymous inspector provided a specific time and place to meet. Initially unsure about the phone call, Greg's curiosity eventually won out. Greg then asked Jason to come to the agreed location with him. Concerned for Greg's safety, Jason agreed, and they prepared by bringing flashlights and baseball bats for protection. Greg and Jason arrived at the remote location indicated by the mysterious caller, but the darkness made it difficult to see. There were no street lights, making it extremely dark. The caller informed Greg that the package containing the documents would be attached to a large utility pole. Upon discovering the package, Greg approached the pole while holding a flashlight, slowly scanning the surrounding area with the light. Jason noticed that Greg's flashlight suddenly focused on something in the bushes. Greg immediately yelled, "Gun!" A gunshot rang out, causing Greg and Jason to quickly flee the scene. Bullets whizzed past their heads as they ran toward their car. When they reached the car, Jason realized that Greg had been shot. Jason quickly called 911, but was unable to provide a detailed description of the shooter to the police. However, he was able to lead them to the exact location of the shooting. During the investigation, police searched the area where the shooting occurred and focused on a utility pole, as the caller had told Greg to retrieve a package from that location. Near the pole, police discovered a neatly folded towel. Police found this suspicious and wondered if someone had intentionally left the towel behind to trick Greg into thinking it was a package he was supposed to retrieve. According to Jason's testimony, he reported hearing up to 6 gunshots at the scene, but police were unable to find any shell casings or weapons. The lack of forensic evidence led investigators to believe that the shooter may have had extensive experience and knowledge of weapons, allowing them to avoid leaving any evidence of the crime. As police searched the area where Greg was shot, they noticed a distinct smell of feces in the air. Further investigation revealed a pile of feces along with a towel nearby, which appeared to have been used to clean up after someone had defecated. Both the stool and towel samples were preserved and sent to the crime lab for forensic analysis in an attempt to find clues or potential evidence related to the shooting. However, the process of collecting DNA evidence is time-consuming, and it took up to a month to develop a DNA profile from the stool and towel samples. While waiting for the DNA results, the police continued their efforts to find the shooter. They examined all available evidence, followed up on potential leads, and thoroughly investigated several individuals. The police focused on Greg's estranged wife, Diana. The police asked Diana to come to the police station for questioning. They wanted to know if she knew of a private investigator who had worked with her husband, Greg, on matters related to their divorce. Diana claimed that she knew nothing about the detective and said that she no longer spoke to Greg. She also gave an alibi, saying she was home with her son at the time of the shooting. When questioned further, Diana said she could not think of anything else to add and could not identify anyone who might have been involved in the crime. Greg regained consciousness and began his recovery. As his health improved, the police interviewed him about the incident. They asked about his wife Diana and her possible involvement in the shooting. Greg admitted that he and Diana had a troubled history and were in the midst of a tense divorce and custody battle over their son. He suspected that Diana might have been involved in the shooting. Greg also said he had no enemies and did not know who might be behind the shooting. Early in the investigation, the police investigated the phone number that had called Greg. The number was on a pay-as-you-go plan, indicating that it did not belong to anyone. However, the police were successful in obtaining information from the cell phone carrier, which led them to a Best Buy near Carlsbad where the phone was purchased. The police immediately contacted the store manager to request information about the purchase, including the date of the transaction. They also requested any available video footage of the person who purchased the phone. After reviewing hours of video footage, the manager identified relevant footage that corresponded to the time of purchase of the phone. The footage was sent to the police for review. Although the video was grainy, the police were able to identify Diana, Greg's wife, in the footage. This new information made Diana the prime suspect in Greg's shooting. Diana was arrested, and during her arrest, Diana repeatedly maintained her innocence. The police then questioned Diana about her purchases at Best Buy. They discovered that she had purchased a cell phone, which then called Greg, leading to his shooting. However, Diana initially told the police that she had purchased a router. Faced with a surveillance camera image of the person who purchased the cell phone, who looked exactly like her, Diana admitted the truth. Following this revelation, Diana changed her story about her involvement in Greg's shooting. She said that her fear of Greg prompted her to buy a gun, which led her to practice at a local shooting range called Iron Sights. At Iron Sights, Diana claimed she met an instructor named Weldon McDavid, who taught her how to shoot. Weldon was a former Marine with expertise in firearms. Diana reportedly told Weldon about her difficult divorce and custody battle with Greg, which led to a close friendship between Diana and Weldon that eventually turned into love. Diana told police that she and Weldon had devised a plan. To carry out the plan, Weldon told Diana to buy a phone and use it to lure Greg to a remote location. Weldon's job was to intimidate Greg without using force. Diana admitted to driving Weldon to the location and picking him up. However, when she heard police sirens approaching in the distance, she asked about the situation. Weldon later revealed to her that he had shot Greg in self-defense because Greg had been aggressive toward him. She denied any involvement in the shooting and insisted that she had never asked Weldon to commit any acts of violence against her husband Greg. Diana was charged with attempted murder after admitting her role in the incident involving Greg. Fortunately, Greg quickly recovered from the gunshot wound to the chest and was released from hospital shortly afterwards. The police tracked down Weldon and brought him in for questioning. When the police asked about his relationship with Diana and his whereabouts on the night of the shooting, Weldon claimed he was at home, about 30 minutes from Carlsbad. The police then asked Weldon for a DNA sample, which made him visibly nervous as he realized they were getting closer to the truth. When asked if his DNA might have been present at the crime scene, Weldon feigned surprise and suddenly remembered something, saying it was a recent memory. Weldon told police that the night before the shooting, he had gone jogging due to stomach problems after eating Mexican food for dinner. He claimed to have stopped on a dirt road to use the restroom. Based on this information, police obtained a search warrant for Weldon's home. Their search turned up a rifle with a live bullet and 6 fired casings in the rafters. The 6 casings confirmed Jason Kack's account of hearing 6 gunshots. As a result, Weldon was arrested and charged with attempted murder and attempted murder. Police searched Diana's home with a warrant and examined her computer. They discovered a search history for the phrase, "new moon." Notably, the night Greg was shot, September 1st, coincided with a new moon, when the surrounding light was very dim. By carefully analyzing Diana's search history, police were able to conclude that she had prior knowledge of the shooting. Her interest in the new moon suggested that she intended to take advantage of the lack of ambient light to facilitate the murder of her husband. Further investigation revealed Diana's motive for killing Greg. As part of the divorce settlement, Diana was required to pay Greg $120,000 for their home. Faced with the possibility of not being able to make payments on time, Diana may have seen getting rid of Greg as a way to avoid paying the money. In October 2017, the trial of Diana Lovejoy and Weldon McDavid began. The jury returned a guilty verdict, convicting Diana and Weldon of conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder. Upon hearing the verdict, Diana collapsed to the ground. Weldon was sentenced to 50 years in prison, while Diana received a sentence of 26 years in prison. Both defendants maintained their innocence despite the guilty verdict. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Alexandria Kostyl. Alexandria Kostyl. Born on September 11, 1997 in St. Louis, Missouri, Alexandria, commonly known as Ally, is the adorable daughter of Cindy and Keith and has an older brother named Andrew. Alexandria has a friendly and approachable personality. From a young age, Alexandria's bright smile and warm personality attracted people. As she grew up, Alexandria's positive energy spread a positive life to those around her. She spends time with her friends, classmates, and family members. Alexandria's ability to connect with people from all walks of life is truly remarkable. Alexandria is a charming and compassionate person who always helps those in need. She attended Lindbergh High School, where she developed her passion for athletics. During high school, Alexandria met her best friend, Maddie Norris, and they formed a close bond and friendship that grew into a deep and trusting sisterly bond. Alexandria and Maddie shared a passion for exploring life and trying new experiences. Together, they faced challenges, laughed, and made lasting memories. During their time together, they enjoyed afternoons spent watching movies. One of their favorite movies was Legally Blonde. Once Alexandria got her driver's license, she and Maddie often drove around town in Alexandria's convertible. As their senior year approached, Alexandria still had no date for the upcoming prom. Although a few guys had asked her out, she had never had a serious relationship or boyfriend. Feeling frustrated, she considered skipping the event. However, Maddie asked to be Alexandria's dance partner at the prom. Alexandria was deeply moved, and so Alexandria wore a beautiful red dress to the prom. After graduating from high school, Alexandria made her dream of attending the University of Mississippi in Oxford, Mississippi come true. She was drawn to the University of Mississippi, also known as Ole Miss, because of its large student body. An avid sports fan, she was especially impressed by the school's renowned football program. In 2006, Alexandria began her freshman year at Ole Miss, where she majored in marketing and business. While at Ole Miss, Alexandria joined a sorority and became one of its founding members. She is also president of the Ole Miss Golf Club. Alexandria, with a strong passion for sunsets, she took to taking pictures to capture their beauty, with the aim of sharing this beauty with the world. Alexandria created an Instagram account to showcase her beautiful sunset photos. One night, while at a bar in downtown Oxford, Alexandria met Brandon Theld, a charming young man from Fort Worth, Texas. She was immediately attracted to him and invited him to several sorority dances. Over time, Alexandria's feelings for Brandon grew. Born into a loving Christian family, Brandon had a fulfilling childhood, with his father being a prominent doctor in Fort Worth. Growing up, Brandon had a classic Texas childhood filled with activities like hunting, fishing, and soccer. Alexandria's love of the outdoors made him eager to participate in a variety of outdoor activities. During school breaks, Alexandria's best friend Maddie from St. Louis visited Alexandria in Oxford, Mississippi. According to Alexandria, Maddie was excited to see Brandon. However, during Maddie's time there, Brandon did not come to visit and see Alexandria's deceased best friend. This left her heartbroken. Maddie witnessed Alexandria's sadness and felt sorry for her friend. Despite her trauma, Alexandria remained strong and focused on her studies at Ole Mississippi. Alexandria had a great first year, with high grades, new friends, and the strong sense of humor. The summer of 2019, right before Alexandria's senior year, was a time of great anticipation for Alexandria and her parents, Cindy and Keith. They were all looking forward to her senior year at Ole Mississippi. Alexandria's parents decided to visit her at Oxford University for a few days. They were happy to see how quickly their daughter adjusted to her new surroundings. At the time, Alexandria was busy teaching a gym class and attending summer school. When her parents arrived, Alexandria gave them a tour of the campus, showing them her favorite spots in town. The visit gave her parents, Cindy and Keith, the opportunity to see firsthand how their daughter has grown and be proud of all she has accomplished. Cindy, her mother, cooks Alexandria's favorite dinner. During the meal, they shared fond memories. Alexandria's parents had originally planned to return home to St. Louis, but she asked them to stay an extra day so they could experience more of what Oxford had to offer. Cindy and Keith agreed to extend their stay. On July 19th, after returning home, her parents called Alexandria around 7 p.m. She answered the phone, still sleepy from her nap, and explained to her mother that she planned to go out with friends that evening. Cindy told her daughter that she loved Alexandria and hung up. Little did she know that would be the last time she would speak to her daughter. Sardis Lake is a large recreational area 30 minutes from Oxford that has many hunting camps. The area is large and is patrolled by the local police department for safety. On June 20th, 2019, a police officer began patrolling Sardis Lake early in the morning. As the officer drove around the lake, he noticed near a picnic table the body of a young woman lying on the ground. The officer was shocked by the discovery and immediately called for help. Other officers and paramedics arrived on the scene a few minutes later. Upon arrival, the officer found a wallet in a nearby ditch. When the wallet was opened, it contained an Old Miss school ID and a driver's license identifying the owner as Alexandria Kostrel. Later, after the discovery of Alexandria's body at Sardis Lake, the police had to notify her parents, Cindy and Keith. However, they were away from home in St. Louis at the time. Her mother was devastated when she heard the news about her daughter. The news of Alexandria's death shocked her friends as well as her parents. Alexandria's friends turned to social media, using the hashtag #JusticeForAllie, to express their grief and demand justice for her. They share fond memories of Alexandria in social media posts, talking about the positive impact she had on their lives. And her friends sent their condolences to her family. Following the tragic death of Alexandria, we express our deepest condolences to the Alexandria family during this extremely difficult time. At the crime scene near Sardis Lake, police found White Claw water bottles and .40 caliber shell casings on the ground. A ballistics expert was called in to analyze the scene and piece together the events surrounding Alexandria's murder. The expert determined that the killer was initially sitting across from Alexandria on a picnic bench when they fired the first shots. However, after the first shot, the killer stood up and began walking around the table toward Alexandria, firing multiple shots as they approached. One bullet missed Alexandria and struck the wooden picnic table. While searching for evidence, police searched Alexandria's apartment but did not find her phone. However, they discovered that Alexandria's Apple Watch had some unexpected syncs with her text messages the night before she was killed. When they examined the messages, they discovered that Alexandria had been having lengthy conversations with Brandon Fade. The messages revealed that Alexandria and Brandon had planned to meet before she was killed. Police investigating Alexandria's murder contacted Brandon on Sunday morning to ask to meet at the police station. However, Brandon declined the invitation that day but agreed to meet the next day at 8:30 a.m. Monday. On Monday, Brandon failed to show up at the police station as scheduled, prompting police to trace his cell phone. Cell phone data showed that Brandon was traveling south on Interstate 55 toward Memphis, leading police to suspect that he was trying to flee. As a result, they issued an arrest warrant and alert for his vehicle, which was easily identifiable due to its unique license plate. 2 hours after the warrant was issued for Brandon, the Memphis Fugitive Task Force located his vehicle at a gas station. Brandon was found sitting in his vehicle at a gas pump, where task force agents arrested him and notified Mississippi police. When police searched Brandon's vehicle, they discovered a .40 caliber handgun. Brandon's clothing was also found to be covered in blood after he exited the vehicle. After his arrest and return to Mississippi, police began tracking Brandon in the days leading up to the Alexandria murders. On Saturday, July 20th, Brandon visited friends and went bowling. The next day, Brandon visited another friend, bringing a 6-pack of beer and the same .40 caliber handgun found in his vehicle. The friend reported that they talked for a while, but when the friend woke up on Monday, Brandon was no longer there. Brandon's background check did not reveal any history of violence or altercations. Interviews with friends and family members of both Brandon and Alexandria provided detailed information about the couple's history. They met at a local bar in Oxford during their freshman year and initially began dating. However, their relationship declined during their sophomore year. Notably, Alexandria's loved ones noticed a change in her demeanor, as she seemed to be more invested in the relationship than Brandon. This imbalance led to tension between the two. Brandon eventually blocked Alexandria from contacting him because she frequently went out at night, drank, and then called him. A year after their breakup, Brandon and Alexandria got back together the summer before Alexandria's senior year. They decided to rekindle their relationship. However, the reunion did not last long. Brandon was eventually charged with Alexandria's murder, specifically premeditated murder, which carries the death penalty. When news of Brandon's arrest spread, it caused widespread shock and attracted intense media attention in Oxford. The community was caught up in speculation and rumors as people shared their theories about the case. Reporters descended on the town, seeking interviews with people close to Alexandria and Brandon. In September 2019, Brandon pleaded not guilty to murder. As police continued to gather evidence, they reviewed text messages exchanged between Brandon and Alexandria before her murder. The messages revealed that Alexandria was concerned that she might be pregnant in April 2019, 3 months before her death. On April 14th, Alexandria sent Brandon a photo of a home pregnancy test result. He made it clear that they would not keep the baby and suggested that they could buy abortion pills. Alexandria, however, did not want an abortion, and she thought that she would meet someone who would love her and her child. Despite this, Brandon was adamantly against having a child, telling Alexandria that it would ruin his life. Police also discovered surveillance footage that showed Alexandria leaving a bar in Oxford Square at around 11:45 p.m. on July 18th. About an hour later, at 1:30 a.m., Alexandria met Brandon and he drove them to Sardis Lake. Brandon's defense attorney claimed that he and Alexandria had been drinking throughout the day. At Sardis Lake, they sat at a picnic table and listened to music. Brandon then got up and walked to his truck, where he used drugs. He walked back to Alexandria, returned to his truck, and retrieved a .40 caliber gun. By the time Brandon retrieved his gun, there had been a shooting on the other side of the lake. After the incident, Brandon and Alexandria continued to talk, but the situation became heated, and Brandon shot her. According to the defense, Brandon's actions were influenced by the combined effects of drugs and alcohol. The police and Alexandria's family saw the incident from a different perspective. They believed that Brandon killed Alexandria because he suspected she was pregnant, which he believed would ruin his life. To them, the murder appeared premeditated. Brandon agreed to a plea deal with state police on August 27, 2021, avoiding the death penalty. Under the deal, Brandon admitted to first-degree murder and received a life sentence without parole. Alexandria's loved ones attended the hearing. Brandon addressed Alexandria's family after the sentencing, expressing remorse for his actions and asking for their forgiveness. He acknowledged the great pain he had caused and hoped they could find forgiveness in their hearts. Although Alexandria's autopsy report showed that she was not pregnant at the time of her death, her mother, Cindy, believes that Alexandria was pregnant and lost the baby. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Sherry Papini. Keith Papini and Sherry first met in junior high, when he was in 7th grade and she was in 8th grade. Their friendship quickly blossomed and they remained close throughout their teenage years. However, over time, they lost contact with each other and went separate ways. Sherry eventually moved on and married another man in 2006, but their marriage was short-lived, lasting only 2 years. After her divorce, Sherry found herself single once again. Unbeknownst to her, a chance encounter with Keith was on the horizon, and their reunion would rekindle the spark they had long ago. This unexpected reunion revealed the growth and maturity that time apart had brought them. They discovered how much they had missed each other and decided to give their relationship a second chance. As they started dating, their connection grew stronger with each passing day. Within a year of reuniting, Keith and Sherry realized they were meant to be together. In 2009, they got married and had 2 children, and lived in Reading, California. To care for her children, Sherry left her job in telecommunications, and Keith continued working at Best Buy as a member of the Geek Squad. Keith and Sherry Papini had what seemed like the perfect life to those around them. However, their seemingly idyllic life took a drastic turn on November 2, 2016, when Keith returned home from work to find his wife, Sherry, missing. Normally, Sherry was at home when Keith arrived, but she was nowhere to be found this time. Keith initially thought Sherry might have gone for a walk, but as the minutes ticked by with no sign of her return, his concern grew. He decided to call their children's daycare center to see if Sherry had picked up the kids. To his surprise and concern, the school secretary told him that Sherry had not been there. Keith then decided to track Sherry's phone using the Find My iPhone app. The app showed that her phone was located at the end of their driveway. Keith immediately ran outside and began searching. To his dismay, he found Sherry's phone lying on the ground, along with her headphones. What's more, he discovered strands of hair tangled in the headphones. Distraught, Keith quickly contacted the Shasta County Sheriff's Office. The Sheriff's Office acted quickly and treated Sherry's disappearance as a serious matter from the very beginning, they bringing in the FBI to assist with the investigation. Keith is determined to find his wife and bring her home safely. To achieve this, he has asked for the public's assistance. Keith contacted the media to help spread the word about Sherry's disappearance, they sharing her story by covering every detail of her case. As a result, the public became deeply interested in Sherry's disappearance, largely due to her striking appearance and the seemingly ideal life she led. As the story gained media attention, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office started receiving numerous tips from the public. However, these information do not assist in finding Sherry. In their investigation, police examined Sherry's phone for clues. Upon reviewing the phone's contents, investigators found a heated text message exchange between Sherry and Keith from a few months earlier. This discovery raised suspicions about Keith's involvement in Sherry's disappearance. Despite these concerns, Keith cooperated with the police investigation and even volunteered to take a polygraph test to clear his name. The test results showed that Keith was telling the truth. Aside from the text message exchange between Keith and Sherry, investigators found several messages on Sherry's phone from men using fake female names. Further examination suggested that Sherry was preparing to leave Keith. On November 10, 2016, the police located one of these men and questioned him about Sherry's location. He reported meeting Sherry 5 years prior at a restaurant during a work event, although he claimed to have no knowledge of her whereabouts. He did offer some insight into her marriage to Keith. He shared that she had confided in him about her fear of her husband, Keith, due to his violent behavior. He claimed Keith often confined Sherry to their home. The police opened an investigation into Keith's behavior to verify these allegations. However, after questioning friends and neighbors, they found no concrete evidence supporting Keith's portrayal as a violent person. Friends of the couple shared a different perspective. They described Sherry as attention-seeking and has a tendency to overreact. This new information led the police to consider that Sherry might have exaggerated or fabricated about being abused by her husband. On Thanksgiving morning, just days after Sherry went missing, police received a call for help at 4:32 a.m. The caller reported a woman on the side of I-5 who seemed to need assistance. Officers quickly are present to the scene and found a woman bound by chains and zip ties. Due to her disheveled state, it took a moment for them to identify the woman as Sherry. The officers were relieved to find Sherry alive. They carefully removed her chains and zip ties to ensure her safety. After her release, the officers took Sherry to the hospital for medical attention. It was at the hospital that the full extent of Sherry's ordeal became clear. She had multiple bruises, her hair had been cut short, and she had a burn mark on her arm. Additionally, she had a severe rash and had lost a significant amount of weight, dropping to just 87 pounds. Sherry was interviewed at Woodland Memorial Hospital while recovering, but she was too distraught to share any details without her husband present. Her husband, Keith, was allowed to stay with her during the interview. According to Sherry, she was jogging when a dark-colored SUV approached. The vehicle was driven by 2 women. The older woman, who had a gun, got out of the car and approached Sherry, while the younger woman stayed in the vehicle. Sherry stated she was forced into the SUV. Before getting in, Sherry left her phone, headphones, and some of her hair behind in the driveway. She intentionally left clues for Keith in case anything went wrong. During the journey in the SUV, Sherry said she drifted in and out of sleep, making it difficult to keep track of time. The women also covered Sherry's face, preventing her from seeing the direction or location she was being taken. Sherry reported that her captors, 2 women, told her that she was taken because a man wanted to buy her. However, the women did not provide any information about the man's identity or his location. As a result, Sherry felt unease and fear, unsure of where she was being taken or what would happen to her during her captivity. During her testimony, Sherry also claimed to have experienced physical abuse from one of the captors. She alleged that this woman physically hit her many times, causing various injuries. She stated that she was branded on her right shoulder with the word Exodus, which would reportedly make her more appealing to her buyer. Sherry's captors played Mexican mariachi music constantly, of discomfort for Sherry. Throughout her captivity, Sherendra was confined to a small room with boarded-up window. Sherry described the basic but unsanitary and uncomfortable living conditions. In the closet, where she was chained, there was a bucket for her to use for both bowel movements and urination. Approximately 3 weeks after being in captivity, Sherry heard the sound of a gunshot. After that, she never saw the older Hispanic woman again. The other captor, who had been known to remain silent, now communicated more and ordered Sherry into a car, then driven along Interstate I-5. Car suddenly came to a stop, catching Sherry off guard. Startled, she looked around, and was then instructed by kidnapper to exit the vehicle. Sherry carefully got out of the car, feeling both frightened and hopeful. Was this her chance to escape, or was she being led into a more dangerous situation? Without any clear answers, she was left with deep uncertainty. After Sherry's rescue from the side of Interstate 5, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office held a press conference to announce her safe return. During the conference, authorities revealed that Sherry had been abducted by 2 Hispanic women. Unfortunately, this has sparked a wave of racism against Hispanics. In the aftermath of her abduction, Sherry began attending therapy sessions to cope with her ordeal. Fortunately, as a California resident, she became eligible for the Victims' Compensation Fund, which uses state budget to help pay for victims' therapy in the aftermath of the abduction. Sherry has changed her life, giving up her outgoing personality and limiting her social interactions. She now spends most of her time indoors, instead of participating in many of the social activities she once enjoyed. The police released a composite sketch of 2 Hispanic women suspected to be involved in Sherry's abduction about a year into the investigation. However, no new information or leads were received. The police also disclosed that they found male DNA on Sherry's underwear, the same one she was wearing when she was found on the side of the I-5. Authorities confirmed that the DNA did not belong to Sherry's husband, Keith. 2 years after her abduction, the police were still unable to find a match for the male DNA on Sherry's underwear. And the case remained unresolved. In 2020, a significant development took place in the investigation of Sherry's case. The police responsible for her case applied for approval to utilize a new technology called familial DNA analysis, which involves examining DNA profiles to pinpoint possible relatives of the person who contributed the DNA. Familial DNA testing is a crucial tool in solving crimes. It works by comparing DNA evidence to the DNA of known individuals, usually family members of a suspect, to see if there's a match. To aid in the investigation, researchers use genetic markers shared among relatives to narrow down the pool of suspects. In the Sherry Papini case, the police have found new clues when they matched male DNA found on her underwear to family member James Reyes, Sherry's ex-boyfriend. This unexpected result led to numerous questions and changed the direction of the investigation. As a result, the police began to suspect Sherry's ex-boyfriend of being involved in her abduction. To investigate further, the police collected a soda bottle from James's trash and sent it to the forensic lab for DNA analysis in June 2020. The lab then compared the DNA from the soda bottle to the DNA sample found on Sherry's underwear. 1 month later, the lab confirmed that James Reyes was a match to the DNA sample discovered on Sherry's panties the day she was found. The police interviewed James at his home in Costa Mesa, California, about the disappearance of his former girlfriend, Sherry. James stated that he had dated Sherry about 10 years ago and last saw her a year after their breakup. When asked if he was involved in her kidnapping, James initially denied any involvement. However, as the interview progressed, James revealed that he was still close friends with Sherry. He said he was involved in Sherry's disappearance but didn't kidnap her. Instead, he just helped her. According to James, Sherry had contacted him about escaping her abusive husband, Keith. To help her, James arranged for a car, which was rented by one of his friends on November 2, 2016. James used that vehicle to pick up Sherry the next day. Sherry stayed in the back seat of the car during the long drive to James' house in Costa Mesa, lying down the entire time. Once they arrived, Sherry isolated herself in the bedroom for the remainder of her stay. James continued with his daily routine, while Sherry occasionally helped out by cleaning and cooking. During her stay, Sherry started dieting to lose weight. She also asked James to help her harm herself on purpose. Her requests included creating bruises by hitting herself. Sherry asked James to hit her knee with a hockey puck. At first, James was hesitant, but he eventually agreed to her requests. Furthermore, James stated that Sherry asked him to brand the word Exodus onto her right shoulder using a wood-burning tool from Hobby Lobby. James admitted to complying with this request as well. Eventually, Sherry informed James that she had decided to leave his house. Before departing, she requested that James obtain chains and zip ties. Sherry then instructed James drove her back to Redding, California. During the drive, Sherry ordered James to pull over, and he complied. She immediately exited the vehicle, and James drove away. When questioned by the police, James claimed he had no knowledge of the incident Sherry described, involving two Hispanic women. However, when the police visited James's house, they were startled by what they found. The layout of several rooms matched the descriptions Sherry had provided, including James' bedroom and closet, which exactly matched a drawing Sherry had created for the police. Several days later, the police met with Sherry and Keith at the police station. During the interview, the police had evidence that suggested Sherry had faked her own kidnapping, and they were prepared to confront her about it. Before revealing the truth, they asked Sherry if she wanted her husband Keith to leave the room. However, Sherry remained silent. The police decided to leave Sherry and Keith alone for a few minutes. During this time, Sherry shared a secret with Keith. Sherry told her husband that she didn't want the police to find the Hispanic woman who kidnapped her because she felt grateful to the woman for letting her go. As a result, she had no intention of pressing charges against the woman. Keith listened to his wife's explanation but became concerned and scared as her words made no sense to him. He pointed out that even if Sherry chose not to press charges, the woman would still face consequences for her actions. The police then re-entered the room and shared a crucial piece of information. They had obtained a DNA match for the male DNA found on Sherry's clothing. That DNA belongs to James Reyes, his wife's ex-boyfriend. Then, the police informed Sherry and Keith that James had passed a polygraph test, suggesting James was telling the truth. The police believed that Sherry might have faked her abduction, and they claimed to have gathered evidence supporting James' version of what happened. According to the police, they also told Sherry that they had discovered information that suggested her weight loss during her disappearance was intentional. Additionally, they believed the rash on her arms could have been caused by the cleaning products she used at James's home. The investigation into Sherry's kidnapping progressed when police discovered that she had staged the incident. The police found evidence that James had indeed inflicted the injuries on Sherry on her own accord, contradicting her claim that she hadn't seen him since their breakup years ago. Specifically, police claimed to have discovered that James had used a wooden object purchased from Hobby Lobby to brand Sherry. They also discovered that Sherry's broken nose was the result of self-inflicted injuries with a hockey stick. Despite this damning evidence, Sherry continued to deny any involvement in her disappearance. However, James provided the police with details about Sherry's disappearance that only someone with insider knowledge would know. Consequently, on March 3, 2022, Sherry was arrested by the FBI for lying to federal agents and faking her own abduction. 6 weeks later, she agreed to plead guilty to these charges as part of a plea deal with federal prosecutors. In the subsequent sentencing, Sherry's defense team requested a lenient sentence of 1 month in prison and 7 months of home detention. However, the prosecution recommended a more severe 18-month sentence. Ultimately, the court sentenced Sherry to 18 months in prison and ordered her to pay a $300,000 fine in September 2022, accepting the prosecution's recommendation. During her sentencing, the judge described she as manipulative and dishonest. At the sentencing hearing, Sherry apologized to those who had been affected by her actions and acknowledged her guilt. She took responsibility for her dishonesty and the harm it had caused to herself and others. Sherry was released from prison in August 2023 and placed in a halfway house. Her relationship with Keith ended on the day of her arrest in March 2022, when Keith learned the truth about her actions. Shortly after Sherry's guilty plea, Keith filed for divorce and sought full custody of their children. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Rob Andrew. Brenda Evers was born on December 16, 1963, in Enid, Oklahoma. Her parents were Christians. The family often gathered around the dinner table, prayed together, and participated in church activities. Brenda grew up to be a quiet and calm girl. She did well in school and spent a lot of time at church helping others. While many of her friends were dating, Brenda patiently waited for her ideal partner. While in high school, she cheered for the school's soccer team. Brenda was a moral and humble young woman, just like her mother. She loved to dance but did not go to parties often. Brenda's goal was to be a devoted wife and mother, devoting herself to her family after marriage. At the age of 17, Brenda met Rob Andrew, her friend's older brother. Rob was older and in college. They quickly discovered that they had much in common. Although they were from different branches of Christianity, Brenda was Lutheran and Rob was Baptist. They both held conservative views, attended church regularly, and wanted to raise a large, happy family. Their friendship gradually blossomed into romance. Brenda then went to college in Winfield, Kansas. Despite being 125 miles apart, they tried to keep in touch regularly. To be closer to her lover, Brenda transferred to a college in Stillwater, Oklahoma, a year later. By the end of the summer of 1984, they married. Not long after, Rob received an attractive job offer in Houston, Texas. Although he was hesitant, Brenda convinced her husband to accept it. While Rob developed his career as an advertising executive, Brenda also completed her degree and found a job in the banking industry. Brenda loved the bustling life in the big city, with its tall buildings and vibrant nightclubs. Texas changed her a lot. She became more confident, started taking care of herself, dressed fashionably, wore makeup, and made many friends. However, Rob was not happy with these changes. He believed that a woman of faith should be more restrained. In addition, Rob began to feel homesick. So when he received an offer to return to the advertising agency in Oklahoma City, he happily agreed. Brenda did not support her husband's decision, leading to an argument between the two. In the end, they agreed that Rob would move to the new place first, and if everything went well, his wife would follow. After several months of living apart, the family reunited. In the early 1990s, Rob and his wife moved into a luxury home in Landsbrook. 9 months later, they had their first daughter, Tricity. Brenda quit her job to become a stay-at-home mom and raise the children. 4 years later, they had their son, Parker. Their family life seemed perfect, with love, children, home, and wealth. Rob and Brenda were married for approximately 17 years and had 2 children together. As a deeply religious couple, they raised their children with strong faith and moral values. They regularly attended church as a family and participated in charitable activities. From the outside, their marriage appeared happy and stable. However, in October 2001, their family life unexpectedly fell apart when Brenda left Rob and initiated divorce proceedings. After that, Rob stopped by their old home to pick up their children for the holidays as planned. That evening, Brenda met him at the door and asked him to fix a broken appliance in the garage. As Rob bent down to check, he heard footsteps behind him. As he turned around, he was shot and fell to the concrete floor. At around 6 p.m., emergency services received a call from Brenda. She reported that she was injured and her husband was dead. An ambulance was dispatched immediately. When paramedics arrived, they found a horrific scene in the garage. A man was lying in a pool of blood, dead from a gunshot wound. His wife, Brenda, had a less serious wound to her arm. Brenda's clothes were covered in blood, and she appeared to be in shock. Paramedics confirmed that she was indeed in shock. Brenda said that she had tried to give Rob first aid, but she thought he was dead. They noticed that the victim's hand was bandaged. After the incident, Brenda was taken to the hospital for treatment. Police began investigating the scene as soon as the ambulance left. They found a .22 caliber bullet in the wall and a shotgun shell casing, indicating that multiple weapons were used. Police also found the victim's wallet intact, ruling out the possibility of a robbery. To clarify the incident, they needed to interview Rob's ex-wife. At the hospital, Brenda explained the reason for her encounter with Rob. She said that while they were together, two masked and armed men broke into the garage. The attackers shouted something that Brenda could not hear. One shot Rob twice, and the other shot and wounded Brenda as she tried to run away. Both attackers then fled. Brenda did not know the identity or motive of the attackers. She believed that Rob was unlikely to have enemies because he was kind and helpful. Brenda admitted that she was scared, especially since there were children in the house at the time of the attack. However, Brenda's story was inconsistent. The police suspected that she was not telling the truth, especially when they saw that the children had not packed for the trip. Interviewing neighbors also did not yield any useful information. No one noticed anything unusual that night. To learn more about Brenda and Rob's personal lives, detectives decided to interview people they knew. It turns out that after the birth of their second child, the relationship between Andrew and Brenda became strained. Andrew often complained to friends and pastors that Brenda mistreated him and hated their marriage. In addition, a close family friend commented that the couple's feelings seemed abnormal. Brenda often expressed her feelings openly, even in front of strangers. Rob seemed to love Brenda too much, as he had forgiven her inappropriate behavior for a long time. Family friends all noticed that Brenda had changed significantly. From a normal housewife, she had become a woman with a more liberal lifestyle. These accusations were well-founded and were backed by clear evidence. Brenda seemed to be going through a midlife crisis. Her style of dress changed significantly. From a refined woman, she changed to wearing revealing clothes and wearing too much makeup. Not only that, Brenda also became secretive with her husband. She did not share where she went, who she met, or what she did. Eventually, Rob discovered that his wife was having an affair. In October 1997, Brenda began an extramarital relationship with Rick Nunley, the husband of a friend and former co-worker at a bank in Oklahoma. They dated for a year, then only communicated by phone occasionally. Brenda then began a relationship with James Higgins, a local store owner. At first, James Higgins was attracted to Brenda's style of dress and flirtatiousness. They began seeing each other regularly once or twice a week after Brenda gave him a hotel room key. The relationship lasted about 5 years. During this time, Brenda's husband, Rob, was completely unaware of the affair. However, he realized that their marriage was in trouble. Brenda hardly spoke to or spent time with Rob anymore. Despite this, Rob remained hopeful that things would improve and tried his best to keep his family together. In 2001, Brenda ended her relationship with James Higgins. This decision had nothing to do with her husband or their marriage. Instead, Brenda had gradually fallen into a life of debauchery and vice. 2 years earlier, a Baptist church had been built in Oklahoma City, largely thanks to Rob's contributions. There, Rob became a deacon, and his wife took on the role of Sunday school teacher. Outwardly, their family appeared prosperous and adhered to traditional moral standards. At that time, Brenda still maintained the image of a model wife. She enthusiastically taught the children basic lessons about religion and friendship. At the church, Brenda met James Pavitt, a married part-time teacher and friend of Rob's. Although James was a devout Christian, he was attracted to Brenda's charm. They began seeing each other in the spring of 2001. At first, they kept their relationship secret, but it gradually became more public. Everyone in the church noticed their closeness. Rob suspected his wife of having an affair, and the two had a big argument. When James divorced his wife, Brenda and Rob also decided to divorce. Although Rob still wanted to save the marriage, Brenda was determined to file for divorce. Shortly after this event, a mysterious call was made to Rob's office, and then a serious car accident occurred believed to be an assassination attempt on him. Rob became suspicious of Brenda and James, so he reported it to the police. Rob did not oppose the divorce and agreed to the custody arrangement for the children. He even supported Brenda financially. So, what was the motive for killing him? The motive was money. James Pavitt, who was also an insurance agent in addition to teaching, had sold Rob an $800,000 insurance policy that summer, with Brenda as the sole beneficiary. As police investigated the attack on Rob's family, they discovered two important things: the relationship between Brenda and James, as well as a problem with the family's car brakes. As the events connected, Brenda's role in her husband's murder became clearer. Finally, the police also found a new suspect. It was Brenda's new lover, James Pavitt. 2 weeks before the garage incident, Rob went to the insurance company to remove his wife, Brenda, from the policy because she was unfaithful. James, the insurance agent, refused, stating that only the beneficiary, Brenda, could make changes to the policy. Not trusting James, Rob checked with the management. The investigation revealed that Brenda and James had attempted to falsify the policy by transferring ownership to Brenda. They had forged Rob's signature and backdated the changes. James's supervisor confirmed to Rob that he was still the owner of the policy and that only the insured could make changes to it. When James learned of this discovery, he was furious, as it led to his dismissal. Investigators learned that Rob had a 16-gauge shotgun when he left the house. During the search of Brenda's house, Brenda did not turn the gun over, and it was not found, which was quite strange. However, when they searched neighbor's house, Judy Gigstad's house, they made an unexpected discovery. A shell casing from the sought-after handgun was found on the bedroom floor, along with several .22 caliber bullets in the Gigstad's attic. The Gigstads were not home at the time of the crime, and there were no signs of forced entry. Gigstad's family confirmed that Brenda had their spare key. In addition, a key piece of evidence came from Joanna Larson, James Pavitt's daughter. On the day of the crime, she lent her father her car with the promise that he would have it repaired. However, when Joanna retrieved the car, she discovered that it had not been repaired and found a .22 caliber bullet inside. When she informed her father, he told her to throw the bullet away. Investigators also discovered that James had purchased a handgun the week before the crime. Therefore, they planned to question James and Brenda. On November 23rd, Rob's funeral was held. The case was confusing to the victim's family and friends. What was suspicious was that Brenda, her children, and James Pavitt were all absent from the ceremony. This absence worried Rob's relatives and the police. Apparently, those who did not show up had fled, perhaps assuming that the police were searching for the perpetrators. By that time, the suspects had been identified. The autopsy results were released. Brenda's account of the attack differed significantly from the forensic report. As the police had suspected, 2 different weapons were used in the attack. Rob and Brenda's injuries did not match Brenda's description. The first shot at Rob was fired from a distance with a shotgun, while the second shot was fired at close range with a .22 caliber pistol. Brenda's arm was also shot at close range with the same .22. By analyzing the location and shape of the bloodstains on his clothes, it was concluded that Brenda was near Rob when he was shot. The angle of the bloodstains matched the shooter's position, indicating that Brenda herself fired the second shot at Rob. After receiving the autopsy results, Brenda and James were officially declared suspects and wanted. During their escape, James and Brenda eluded the police for many days. The authorities warned the border guards that they might have crossed into another country. However, no trace of them was found. After some time, it became clear that the two had left the country, with the police suspecting they were in Mexico. To catch them, the authorities decided to freeze their bank accounts. Without money, they would eventually be exposed. And sure enough, 3 months later, James contacted his daughter to ask for money. However, he did not expect that his daughter was cooperating with the investigation. Joanna had doubt that her father was involved in the case. It was clear he was hiding something. Thanks to James's call, the investigation discovered the perpetrator's hideout in the city of Cancun. In February 2002, James and Brenda were arrested at the border and turned over to U.S. authorities. They were charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit a felony. The children were placed in the care of their grandparents. After their arrest, neither defendant cooperated with the investigation. They pleaded not guilty and spoke only when their attorneys were present. James was the first to appear in court. The prosecution built a thorough case. They presented information about James's past as an army sniper and his ability to use a gun. His illicit relationship and the plot to murder Rob were also mentioned. His daughter's testimony and physical evidence were presented. Ultimately, the jury found James guilty and sentenced him to death. Brenda's trial was different from James's. Instead of focusing on the details of the case, the prosecutors presented information about Brenda's character and personal life. They called her former lovers to testify, portraying her as unethical and untrustworthy. When questioned about her motive for killing her husband, Brenda claimed innocence and asked to be released if people truly believed her. However, the prosecutors countered by describing her as someone who did not love her husband and killed him for personal gain. To reinforce their argument, the prosecutors presented items from Brenda's suitcase when she fled to Mexico, including lingerie and sex manuals. They questioned whether a grieving widow would act like that. During the trial, the defense team tried to portray Brenda as a victim. They mentioned that she was injured in the attack, but forensic experts determined that she had inflicted the injuries on herself. The defense also produced a confession letter from James, but a handwriting expert confirmed that Brenda had forged the document. A shocking revelation from James's attorney was that Brenda would be the beneficiary of his insurance policy if he died. This suggested that Brenda may have plotted to kill James the same way she did Rob. Or perhaps she hoped to prove her innocence and frame James, so that after he was executed, she would still receive the insurance money. After 6 hours of deliberation, the jury found Brenda guilty and sentenced her to death. Both Brenda and James are currently on death row. Brenda has appealed repeatedly but has been unsuccessful. The crimes of Brenda and James were extremely serious. It is worth noting that they claimed to be religious and taught morality to children, which makes the case even more horrifying. Those who preach morality but do not follow it themselves are hypocrites and cruel. Such people cannot be trusted because they do not truly understand and live by moral principles. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Courtney Holden. Courtney Holden was born on February 28, 1992. When she was 2 years old, she was sent to an orphanage. Life there was not happy, not only for Courtney but for all the other children. Every day at the orphanage began with a prayer. Children of all ages prayed to the Almighty to give them a family and a happy life. Finally, Courtney's dream came true when she was adopted by the Holden family. Courtney arrived in Spokane at the age of 4 and began living in the Holden family home with Joshua and some other foster children. However, instead of finding a loving family as she had hoped, her life here was worse than at the orphanage. What Courtney experienced at the Holden home could only be described as a real nightmare. From a young age, she was forced to do all the housework. She had to clean the whole house and wash the dishes after every meal for the entire family. If she made a mistake, she was punished. Surprisingly, the Holden family treated the other foster children better. No one understood why they disliked her so much. Judy Holden was old when she adopted Courtney, and she was the last child they had received from the orphanage. Perhaps this explains their inexplicable cruelty and hatred towards Courtney. She was forbidden to go out without permission and was often abused. Visitors to the house often heard Judy and Joshua calling Courtney Cinderella, as if she were in a fairy tale, but in reality, she was more like a slave to her cruel stepmother and siblings. Courtney was very sensitive and had become accustomed to a difficult life with the Holden family. She feared her foster mother and felt terrified just seeing her brother Joshua. He did not allow her to communicate with her friends. She was not allowed to use a cell phone or other modern devices. She was only allowed to leave the house when necessary and always had to ask for permission. She only enjoyed fresh air and chatted with her neighbors when she was alone in the backyard. However, she became accustomed to this life and did not feel bitter. She still respected her adoptive parents because they were the only family she knew, and she had no concept of a normal family. Courtney experienced a period of freedom when Joshua, due to conflicts with their parents, moved in with his sister for an extended time. For Courtney, this was the happiest period of her life. She finally experienced the freedom she had always longed for, allowing her to go out, walk around, and meet friends. After finishing school, Courtney fell in love for the first time. Michael was an ideal partner. She felt the care and attention from him that she had never received from anyone else. Every time she met Michael, Courtney felt extremely happy. Their relationship lasted until 2011, when they had a son. Michael was eager for Courtney to move in with him to create a complete family. However, for unknown reasons, Courtney refused this offer. She continued to live in a Holden household, which she did not like, and ended her relationship with Michael. After the Holden family went through many changes, their home became deserted. The adopted children grew up and left, and John Holden, Courtney's adoptive father, was passed away. For a while, Courtney lived with her adoptive mother, Judy, and sometimes her son Joshua was allowed to visit with Judy's permission. Their life was quite peaceful when Joshua, Courtney's brother, was away. However, after their father died in 2014, Joshua returned and began causing trouble for the family. He installed many surveillance cameras around the house on Hero Avenue, near Rogers High School in Northeast Spokane. Signs that said, "Smile, you're being watched," were placed all over the yard, with cameras pointing in many directions. This made Courtney nervous because she knew that going out would get her in trouble with Joshua. Courtney's life once again became difficult and uncertain. Around 2015, Courtney revealed to a neighbor that she was again deprived of her right to use a cell phone, manage her social media accounts, communicate with people outside the family, drive, or leave the house without Joshua's permission. After Courtney gave birth, Joshua became so bitter that he forced her to cut off all contact with the baby's father. Courtney silently complied. The neighbor noticed bruises on Courtney's face and arms. When asked, she frankly admitted that Joshua hit her. They were worried and did not understand why Courtney would endure such abuse. They tried to help her by reporting it to the police, but the Holden family always tried to suppress the matter. This was partly because Courtney never publicly admitted that she was being threatened by her brother. Eventually, Courtney was forbidden to talk to neighbors and was only allowed to go out at night. She silently complied. Courtney knew Joshua better than anyone. He was a large, overweight man with considerable strength and was often abusive. Friends of Joshua described him as paranoid, ruthless, and unpredictable. He had bragged in public about his ability to easily end a life and dispose of a body without difficulty. He had a notable criminal record. In 2005, he was charged with assault and harassment, but due to lack of evidence and the victim's unwillingness to cooperate with the police, he was released. He was also suspected of assaulting and sexually abusing a woman in 2003 when the perpetrator could not be identified. In 2006, Joshua was arrested for domestic violence against his mother and burglary. These incidents forced him to flee his parents' home for several years. After returning, Joshua became more violent. He kept complete control over Courtney. She largely cut off contact with her friends, saying she was afraid to go out for fear that Joshua would find out and make things worse. A friend kept in touch with Courtney every day on Facebook until Joshua found out. In her last message, nearly 2 years ago, Courtney said, "I have to go. Joshua is coming home soon." After that, her account has since been permanently deleted. Those who know the Holdens say the family's relationship is unusual. They are surprised that Courtney's child calls Judy mom and Joshua dad, while only calling his biological mother by her first name. This has led some to suspect that Joshua may be the child's biological father. Neighbors and acquaintances have criticized the Holdens' odd lifestyle and antisocial behavior, and have tried to stay away from the house. In August 2018, after an argument, Courtney tried to leave the house with a suitcase of belongings. Her mother, Judy, yelled at her to go home, but Courtney refused. Joshua forcibly took Courtney back into the house. Judy closed the door, and Courtney was unable to escape. This was the last time the neighbors, and perhaps anyone outside the family, saw Courtney. After that, she lived a life of isolation from the outside world. It took nearly 2 years for people to start worrying about her disappearance. In October 2019, Michael expressed concern about not seeing her for nearly 2 years. He wanted to see the child, so he reported Courtney missing to the police on October 24th. The police went to search Holden's house and were surprised to find Courtney was not there. Joshua and Judy refused to cooperate. Judy only allowed the police to look through Courtney's room and then told them to leave. A search dog was used but found nothing. The Holdens claimed that Courtney had abandoned her child and run away. However, they could not explain who was withdrawing Courtney's Social Security benefits and using her electronic food stamps. On the day the police searched the house, Judy and Joshua withdrew the remaining $600 from Courtney's bank account. The next day, a woman claiming to be Courtney called the National Crime Information Center, saying she was safe and did not want to be searched. Police traced the call and found that the woman was Courtney's half-sister. Joshua and Judy later gave conflicting explanations for Courtney's disappearance. They said she ran away with a truck driver and then with a secret lover. Courtney's absence, along with the changing accounts of those who lived with her, made it clear that the Holdens were hiding something. In late October 2019, Joshua and Judy Holden abruptly left Spokane, leading detectives to suspect they were involved in Courtney's disappearance. They were found in Texas, at the home of one of Judy's adopted daughters. Authorities were able to charge them with withholding Courtney's welfare and identity theft, leading to their arrest in Texas. In early October, the Spokane Police Department wanted to check on Courtney's status. The case quickly became a missing persons investigation, which was assigned to Major Crimes Detective Randy Lesser. Courtney was officially declared missing. Alerts were sent to all states, and the media picked up the story, triggering a widespread search. When police and detectives went to check on her home, Joshua and Judy Holden have continued to refuse to cooperate with the investigation. Beside that, Randy told the vet he was worried Courtney might be dead and mentioned he was particularly concerned about Joshua's history of violence. Joshua had been charged with assault in the past, but the case was dismissed when the victim stopped cooperating with prosecutors. Investigators are now gathering DNA evidence and court records from that case, which show Joshua was also suspected in another attack in 2003. Neighbors and family described Joshua as mentally unstable, cruel, and diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. One neighbor revealed that Joshua was unemployed and that Judy feared him. The neighbor said Joshua and Judy often bragged about how they had eluded the police. Joshua also claimed that killing and hiding a body was easy. "Especially when you have kids, you can't just disappear," said Detective Randy. Courtney was also described in court records as a devoted mother who never abandoned her children. For more than 18 months, Courtney was confined to her home and was not allowed to leave. Joshua and Judy gave neighbors and relatives various excuses for her absence, from traveling with her truck driver boyfriend to running away with her fiancé. At one point, they said she was home but not available to receive visitors. When Randy visited their home in early October, Judy claimed that Courtney had just returned home a few days earlier and was taking a walk with her son. However, when asked for her phone number, Judy slammed the door. The police then forced her to let them in to check Courtney's room. According to Randy, Judy appeared very nervous about the situation. According to Randy's court records, the house was extremely messy with items piled everywhere, including on the kitchen counter. Courtney's room was also in disarray, with an empty mattress. Randy commented that it appeared that no one lived there. At one point, Judy panicked. When Randy asked to check the rest of the house for Courtney's child, Judy ordered the investigators to leave. Later that day, a neighbor informed Randy that they had seen Joshua, Judy, and one of Courtney's sisters leave in a truck, along with a child. Detective Randy also became suspicious that Courtney, who suffered from a chronic illness, had not seen a doctor since October 2017. She received her last prescription in July 2017, although she had been taking her medication for months before she disappeared. Despite gaps in her medical records, money continued to be withdrawn from Courtney's bank account each month, and her EBT card was used to purchase groceries. Surveillance footage confirmed Joshua and Judy shopping with a small child. They was also caught on camera withdrawing the remaining money from Courtney's bank account on the day she was declared missing in early October. On October 24th, Joshua and Judy left the home. When police arrived to execute a search warrant, Randy noted that they discovered the DVR from the security camera system had been removed, and the family's 6 pets were also missing. By mid-November, Joshua and Judy's cell phone numbers had been canceled. However, that same day, 2 new phone numbers with Texas area codes were activated on their accounts. About a month after the Holdens moved out, a neighbor called the police to report activity at the house. It was actually one of Judy's daughters and her husband, who had flown in from Texas to check on the property. They said they hadn't seen Courtney in 2 years and that Judy was retired. However, there were inconsistencies in their information. The man told the police that Joshua and Judy had a child, while Judy's daughter insisted that the child was Courtney's. In mid-December, Randy traveled to Texas to look for Joshua and Judy. Police found them at Judy's daughter's house, along with Courtney's son. Joshua and Judy Holden were arrested on multiple charges: identity theft, interference with child custody, unauthorized use of Courtney's bank account, and concealment of her child. The child was found safe and returned to his father. No other family members have been charged with any crime. Police searched Judy's home in Spokane with a search dog but found no trace of Courtney. A search of a home in Texas also turned up nothing. Police also searched a car and trailer belonging to Judy at an RV park in Oklahoma. Joshua, 40, and Judy, 74, are currently in custody in Texas and have refused to answer police questions. They also refuse to be extradited to Spokane. With insufficient evidence to prove their involvement in Courtney's disappearance, it is likely that Joshua and Judy will be released. This is perhaps one of the most mysterious disappearances ever. "I have 4 notebooks full of different information," Randy said of the month-long investigation. Judy and Joshua continue to maintain that they had nothing to do with Courtney's disappearance, while police believe she is likely dead but have unfortunately not been able to prove it. Domestic violence experts point to a number of factors as to why cases like Courtney's are not always reported. One is the societal assumption that someone else will take care of it. According to Morgan Kern, Director of Counseling and Outreach at the YWCA, fear of retaliation can also be a factor. And people sometimes view it as a family issue, something to be dealt with at home. Although Judy and Joshua have been accused of multiple acts, they have not been charged directly in Courtney's disappearance. However, many still suspect they knew what happened. Joshua not only had a history of aggression but had also claimed to be capable of killing and hiding a body from the police. Investigators believe Courtney is dead, but no suspects have been arrested in the case. To summarize today's story, it is sad that Courtney was victimized by the Holden family. This young woman longed for a loving family but did not have the courage to defend herself. She believed that the people who abused and exploited her were still family. But does a real family need to make you defend yourself like that? Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ben Rennick. Ben Rennick was born in August 1987 in Missouri. He grew up in a rural area with his family, including his older brother Sam, with whom he was very close. In 1989, the Rennick family moved to a picturesque farm. There, the two brothers enjoyed the outdoors, and it was during this time that Ben developed a passion for snakes. In September 1992, a tragic incident occurred for the Rennick family. While they were away, a gas leak caused an explosion that destroyed their beautiful home. As a result, the family was forced to move into a trailer. Later, Ben's mother, Kim, was diagnosed with terminal breast cancer. Despite the hardships they faced, the Rennick family remained united and supported each other through every challenge. After previous hardships, the family moved to a new house in 2002. Here, Ben was given a room to raise snakes. In 2009, after a long battle with cancer, Mrs. Kim passed away. Before she died, she asked her sons to promise to continue taking care of the farm and pass it on to the next generation. With an endless passion for snakes, Ben founded the company Rennick Reptiles, which quickly gained wide recognition. Thanks to this, he was able to export snakes to many countries around the world, from the UK to Japan. Snake breeding became his passion and purpose in life. He was known as an excellent breeder, dedicated to his work and more concerned with his love for snakes than profit. His reptile farm successfully bred and propagated many species of reptiles, from common species to some of the rarest in the world. The value of Ben's reptile collection was enormous. The snakes in his collection alone were estimated to be worth over $1 million. However, Ben felt lonely and wanted to have a family. In 2010, at a party, he met Lindley, and they quickly developed a relationship. Just a few weeks later, Ben introduced Lindley to his brother Sam and Sam's fiancé Eli. Both Eli and Lindley had children from previous relationships, which made it easy for them to connect and become friends. Lindley quickly integrated into the Rennick family and moved in with them. She helped Ben take care of the snake farm. They fell in love and lived like a real family, although they were not officially married. In March 2012, Lindley gave birth to a baby girl named Amelia. Ben was very happy to be a father. However, their happy family life once again encountered difficulties. Frank Rennick, Ben's father, faced serious business difficulties. Before that, he made several illegal stock trades to pay for Kim's medical and treatment expenses. The day before the FBI was scheduled to come to investigate the farm, Frank committed suicide. His death put an end to the investigation. Frank's sons once again faced the pain of losing a loved one. Ben inherited the house and farm, while Sam received a sum of money much larger than the value of the house. Although each had their own families, They lived together as one big family in their parents' house. Sam did not hesitate to use his inheritance to renovate the farm, demonstrating the bond and solidarity between the two brothers. Initially, the relationship between the two brothers was quite good. However, financial disagreements soon caused a rift. After their father passed away, Ben focused on his business and family. He decided to marry Lindley on April 14, 2014, officially making her a member of the Rennick family. Later, Lindley and Ben opened a new business together, Essentia Spa Incorporated. However, the business managed by Lindley encountered financial difficulties. Ben and Lindley often argued about financial issues. Although Lindley worked very hard, her income was still not enough to cover the salon's expenses. Meanwhile, Sam and his wife were also having financial difficulties. Ben allowed Sam and his wife to sell some of the furniture in their house to raise more money, but Lindley did not agree with this decision. This incident led to a conflict between the two families, causing serious damage to their relationship that could not be repaired. Ben decided to improve his family's finances by selling some rare reptiles at a high price. However, this plan failed due to a serious incident at the farm. On June 8, 2017, Lindley entered one of the warehouses and found Ben lying motionless in a pool of blood on the floor. Panicking, Lindley called her brother Sam and the emergency services for help. She reported that she had found her husband lying unconscious on the ground. During the conversation, Lindley dropped the phone and ran away. Sam continued the call and confirmed that his brother had passed away. He suspected that the cause of death could be a snake bite. The Montgomery County Sheriff was called to a snake farm for the first time in many years. Law enforcement officers were nervous about entering the farm, which housed more than 3,000 snakes. They were to examine a man lying in a pool of blood and were on guard against a possible attack by a venomous viper, which was initially believed to have caused the victim's death. When police investigator Dave Colbert arrived at the scene and examined it closely, he discovered a shell casing on a shelf at eye level. This discovery suggested that this was not a snake bite, as initially thought, but a more serious homicide. The shell casing was found near Ben's body, but no weapon was found. The killer had shot the victim multiple times in the back and head. Remarkably, no one in the family heard the gunshots or saw the attacker. Sam and Lindley were summoned to the sheriff's office for questioning. Lindley suspected Sam of being involved in her husband's death and provided a clear motive that Ben wanted to sell the house, but Sam was adamantly opposed. To clarify the matter, Sam was asked to take a lie detector test, which he successfully passed. The police released Lindley and Sam because there was not enough evidence to hold them. An investigation into the motive for Ben's murder was launched. Initially, the police suspected a robbery, but this theory was not confirmed, as all the rare snakes and valuables were still intact at the scene. Just a few days after Ben's death, the police questioned Lindley. They tested her hands and clothes for gunpowder, but the results were negative. After her husband's funeral, Lindley cut off contact with Sam and Eli. She sold her husband's company, inherited the house, and filed a $1 million life insurance claim on Ben. After receiving the insurance money, Lindley decided to sell the Rennick family home for $740,000. The Rennick family was told they would have to move. Sam began to suspect his brother's wife of being involved in Ben's death when he discovered that the insurance claim was settled quickly and the family business was sold shortly thereafter. Sam shared his suspicions with the investigating authorities. As a result, Lindley was brought in for further questioning. During the interrogation, Lindley admitted to having a complicated relationship with her husband, Ben. She also revealed that she occasionally met another man named Eric. However, Eric was ruled out as a suspect because he had an alibi. What was shocking was Lindley's confession that about 3 years after marrying Ben, she had been having affairs with at least 2 other men. Text messages between Ben and his wife showed that he suspected her of having an affair, causing tension in their relationship. On October 5, 2017, the Missouri Highway Patrol administered a lie detector test to Lindley, which she failed. However, due to a lack of concrete evidence in the case, she was released. Although progress has slowed, the investigation into Ben's death continues. A report of police reports shows, a month before Ben Rennick's death, Lindley made her first attempt to kill her husband. She fabricated a story about Ben being an abusive husband who regularly abused and beat her. Lindley told this story to a co-worker at the spa, hoping to gain sympathy and support. Investigators discovered this after Ben died. Lindley Rennick and her accomplice conspired to kill Ben by mixing 15 Percocet pills into a protein shake. Ben drank the shake without realizing it, making him seriously ill for a while, but he eventually survived. Ben had no idea he had been poisoned. Investigators subsequently questioned Lindley 6 times about the incident. A surprising breakthrough in the investigation occurred on January 14, 2020, when a key piece of information was revealed from a state prison. A witness named Brandon Blackwell claimed to know about Ben's death. Brandon told Missouri State Highway Patrol investigators that Lindley was the one who shot Ben and that she had conspired with her ex-boyfriend. Brandon revealed that he and Lindley had been having an affair while she was still married to Ben. A year and a half after Ben's death, Brandon and Lindley had a child together. However, they broke up in 2019. Brandon claimed that Lindley had admitted to him that she had been having affairs, specifically with Ashley Shaw, a co-worker at the spa where she worked, and Michael Humphrey, another ex-boyfriend. Years after Ben's death, Lindley and her ex-lover Michael Humphrey were arrested in connection with Ben's death. However, after their arrests, both blamed each other. The question remains, who really killed Ben? According to Michael's testimony, on the day of the incident, he accompanied Lindley to the farm. Lindley asked Michael to pretend to be the buyer and wear gloves. Although initially assigned to shoot Ben, Michael failed to do so. In the end, Lindley took the gun and shot her husband to death. The investigation into Ben's death lasted 3 years. By January 16, 2020, authorities had issued arrest warrants for 3 suspects: Lindley, Michael Humphrey, and Ashley Shaw. Ashley was granted immunity in exchange for her cooperation in the case. She testified in court against her former employer. The former spa employee revealed that Lindley had been complaining about her husband and had convinced her to join in on the scheme. She told that Lindley claimed that Ben had been demeaning, insulting, and even physically abusive to Lindley. Fearing that she would lose custody of their children after the divorce, Lindley decided to get rid of her husband, Ben. She and Michael conspired to poison Ben with a lethal cocktail. When questioned, Lindley and Michael blamed each other for Ben's death. In October 2021, Michael Humphrey appeared in court in Ine County. His attorney hoped that revealing the murder weapon would reduce the charge to second-degree murder. Although Michael had the gun involved, no conclusive DNA evidence was found on it. To get his sentence reduced, Michael cooperated with prosecutors by revealing the location of the murder weapon. As a result, he was convicted of second-degree murder, a lesser charge. On January 3, 2021, no plea was entered, and Michael was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. Lindley's trial began on December 6, 2021. She was charged with fatally shooting her husband, Ben, on June 8, 2017, at his snake farm in New Florence. According to court records, the plan to kill Ben began at Lindley's spa. According to the statement, Lindley may have made up the story about domestic violence because she feared that Ben would learn of her financial difficulties and take away her children. The first time Lindley attempted to kill Ben, she tried to spike his protein shake with narcotics. The trial detailed the day of Ben's murder, replaying the entire sequence of events through cross-examination. On the day of the murder, Michael picked up Lindley at the spa. Ashley also used Lindley's phone to send text messages from inside the spa, creating false evidence of their location and misleading the investigation. According to court records, Michael intended to kill Ben but asked Lindley to do it. After the shooting, Michael tried to collect all the shell casings but missed some in his haste. He then returned to the spa and threw away Lindley's clothes after she showered, in an attempt to remove gunpowder residue from her body and clothes from the day of the murder. Defense attorney Catherine Barrer asked Lindley to share her personal and family history, her education, her relationship with her ex-boyfriend Michael, as well as her work history and the events that led to her marriage to Ben. The lawyer presented Lindley as a victim of domestic violence. However, no evidence of such violence was found, which weakened this defense. Michael was part of a group accused of planning to kill Ben. Lindley described her relationship with Michael as complex and codependent, involving Michael's drug dealing and her drug addiction. According to witness testimony, Lindley ended her relationship with Michael in late 2010, but they reconnected about a month before Ben's death. Lindley denied the prosecution's allegations of planning to kill Ben, including trying to poison him with a protein shake laced with an addictive substance. In court, Lindley admitted to having affairs with several men and expressed deep remorse. When considering divorce, she did not know who to turn to for advice. As her father was divorced and held strong views on divorce and adultery, Lindley wanted support when talking to Ben, so she contacted her ex-boyfriends, which led to her reconnecting with Michael. During the trial, Lindley admitted to participating in her husband's death and concealing Michael's involvement. She said the reasons were marital problems, including arguments, allegations of abuse by Ben, and stress related to his snake business. Fearful of Ben's reaction to the divorce, Lindley brought Michael to the farm on June 8, 2017. She claimed that her intention was to file for divorce, not to harm Ben. Lindley said that she took Ben's trash to throw away, then went into the nursery and saw Michael and Ben washing their hands. She did not hear their conversation because she was focused on thinking about how to talk to Ben about the divorce. Lindley recounted in a trembling voice how Michael pulled out a gun and shot her husband. She screamed and ran outside, hearing several more gunshots. Shocked and panicked, she only remembers staring at the trees as Michael ran up and pushed her toward the car. When she returned to the snake farm, Lindley discovered Ben's body. She called Ben's brother, Sam, and they checked to see if Ben was still alive by checking his pulse and breathing. Lindley expressed regret for not telling the police right away that she was there with Michael and for not telling them what happened. Due to suspicions of her involvement in her husband's death, the $1 million life insurance policy Ben had purchased long ago could be contested. Lindley has waived her right to the money. Ben became the beneficiary of a trust fund after his father's death. The assets belonged to Ben and his children, not Lindley. However, Lindley received the money she contributed to the trust fund, along with her daughter's scholarship. Lindley admitted to seeking support by sharing her story with her then-boyfriend, Brandon Blackwell. However, the relationship ended shortly after Lindley gave birth to Brandon's child. At trial, Lindley expressed regret for repeatedly lying. "I was just trying to avoid the truth of what happened," she said, and insisted she never wanted her husband to die. Following the final verdict, Lindley's defense team did not file a motion for a new trial. No appeals have been filed against her conviction. However, Lindley filed a defamation lawsuit against Blackwell, claiming that his statements about her involvement in her husband's death were false. However, prosecutor Kevin Zellner questioned Lindley's testimony during cross-examination. He asked why she did not check on her husband after hearing the gunshots, why she did not call 911, why she sent friendly text messages to her husband and Michael after the shooting, and why she continued to lie even after emergency responders were involved. Prosecutor Kevin portrayed Lindley as a clumsy but ruthless mastermind in the murder. Lindley admitted to suggesting that police consider Ben's brother, the victim, as a suspect. During the trial, Kevin criticized Lindley's coldness in accusing the deceased's brother. During the sentencing hearing for second-degree murder and armed criminal action, Lindley broke down and cried but still did not admit her guilt. On December 9, 2021, Lindley, 33, was convicted of second-degree murder. She was sentenced to 13 years in prison for the murder and an additional 3 years for the armed criminal action. In total, Judge Kevin Crane sentenced her to 16 years in prison the following January. Sam and Ben's family were furious about the sentence. They believe that both Michael and Lindley deserve life in prison, as they are as guilty as their co-defendants. Sam expressed deep disappointment and surprise when he realized that in Missouri, a human life is only valued at 13 years in prison. Ben was a promising young man. However, due to the actions of a woman, he and Sam fell into an awkward situation, causing irreparable damage to their relationship. Despite this, Ben continued to live a dignified life. He became famous for his talent in breeding snakes and even created a new species of snake named after him. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Amanda Blackburn. Amanda Grace Byers Blackburn was born on July 31, 1987, in Muskegon, Michigan. She began her education in Indianapolis, Indiana, but her family moved to Elkhart in 1995. In Elkhart, Amanda graduated from Elkhart Christian Academy in 2006. She then continued her education and graduated with an associate degree from Pensacola Christian College in Florida in 2008. Amanda grew up in a family with strong religious beliefs. Her father was the lead pastor at the First Baptist Church in Elkhart, Indiana. From a young age, she was taught about Christianity and the importance of God's Word. Amanda was well-versed in the church's religious traditions, sermons, and psalms, and she always respected these values. While many other young people were eager to experience adult life, attend parties, and fall in love, Amanda had a love for Jesus and a desire to serve Him. God also loved Amanda because He created her as an angel, a blonde, slim girl with a bright smile, kind and sincere. Not only is Amanda beautiful, but her soul and heart are also very pure. Her every action shows love for those around her. When she was a teenager, Amanda vowed to remain pure and not kiss any man until marriage. She always kept that promise. However, her heart was deeply moved when she met her true and only love, Davy Blackburn, a boy from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. He studied religion at Southern Wesleyan University and came from a Christian family with strong faith. Davy and Amanda first met on a blind date at a concert by the Christian band Hawk Nelson, organized by Amanda's sister and Davy's best friend. At that time, they were studying at different universities, but every vacation, they spent time together. It was a pure and innocent love, not dominated by worldly desires. Davy and Amanda often went for walks together, shared their innermost thoughts and favorite quotes from church books. They always found joy in the little things and loved to joke with each other sincerely. Before returning to school, they held a fake milkshake drinking contest, and Amanda lost. Davy jokingly called her Milk Girl. When he looked at Amanda, he realized that she was the girl he wanted to marry. Amanda and Davy had a long-distance relationship. They kept in touch via text messages and phone calls, spending hours talking to each other. Every vacation, they spent time together. They took their relationship so seriously that they even sought counseling from a psychologist to learn how to communicate better. On August 1, 2008, Amanda and Davy got married. After the wedding, Davy shared with friends that from the moment he kissed Amanda, he felt a special connection between them, and he believed it was part of God's plan for them. On the morning of November 10, 2015, a car parked outside a house on Sunnyfield Court. Davey was returning from his daily workout at the gym. He was about to get out of the car, but a phone call kept him in the car for a few minutes. After ending the call, he leisurely got out of the car and walked into the house. When he opened the door, he froze and his gym bag fell from his hands. His wife was lying on the living room floor in a pool of blood. Davey was confused and in shock. He ran to his wife, did a preliminary check, took her pulse, and urgently called the emergency number. Amanda appeared to be alive. In the living room where the tragedy occurred, everything was in disarray. Furniture was scattered everywhere, and her purse was empty. On the second floor of the house, her child was crying. Emergency services arrived at the house 8 minutes later. The area was cordoned off. The house was packed with police and investigators. She was taken to the hospital. On November 11th, the day Amanda was officially confirmed dead, Davey released an official statement, saying that Amanda had dedicated her life to loving and serving those around her. Amanda had made it her mission to help more people come to know Jesus as their personal savior. Davey believed that through Amanda's death and legacy, more people would find faith in Christ. He affirmed that they would continue the work they had begun in Indianapolis. Davey expressed his strong belief that God was good, that their tragedy was turning into victory, and that the best was yet to come. The murder of Amanda shocked not only the Orthodox family but the entire state. People demanded that the perpetrators of the murders of Amanda and her unborn child be found and punished. In his first interview, Davey described how he found his wife, Amanda, severely injured and unconscious on the living room floor. She was only partially dressed, with her underwear lying nearby, face down in a pool of blood. Davey said he left the house around 6 a.m. to exercise and left the door unlocked. "I always do that, I leave without locking the door," he told investigators. It is unclear whether the criminals would have stopped if Davey had locked the door. However, locking the door would have made it more difficult for them to enter, giving Amanda more time to call for help. Unfortunately, that did not happen, and Amanda was shot 3 times, including once in the head. In the days following the incident, police had not arrested the perpetrator. They quickly ruled out the possibility that Davey, Amanda's husband, was involved in the horrific attack. The police have taken a statement from Scott Floyd, an Indianapolis Fire Department paramedic. Scott was the first to arrive at the scene after Davey called 911. When he arrived, he found Davey standing at the end of the driveway with blood on his hands. Scott noted that Davey appeared calm and did not seem to understand what had happened to Amanda. Davey told Scott that Amanda was lying on the floor and that he could not wake her up. Davey said that he got home from the gym at 7:30 a.m. and called his friend Kenneth Wagner while he was in the driveway. He ended the call and entered the house at 8:10 a.m., where he found Amanda lying face down on the floor. Thinking that Amanda was sick or unconscious, he called 911 at 8:22 a.m., 12 minutes after discovering her. That is a long time in an emergency. Davey repeatedly stated he thought there was a problem with the pregnancy, suspecting Amanda had become dizzy and fallen. However, it was suspicious that after 12 minutes, he did not notice a brain mass about 5 feet from her body. Emergency room physician Scott Floyd determined that Amanda's head had clotted, suggesting that the shooting may have occurred several hours before she was taken to the hospital. However, this information was not officially released. When questioned, Davey said that after calling 911, he contacted his father. Defense attorneys did not question Davey further. Authorities verified Davey's account through surveillance cameras at the gym and ruled him out as a suspect. An autopsy performed on November 12 showed that Amanda had been shot 3 times, once in the back of the head, once in the left arm, and once through the upper back. She also had several scratches on her left cheek. a laceration to her lip, and a missing lower tooth. These injuries suggested that a struggle may have occurred between Amanda and her attacker. The investigation was extensive, including reviewing security cameras from nearby streets and interviewing neighbors and family acquaintances. One neighbor reported hearing gunshots about 35 minutes after Davy left the house. Reginald Townsell, another neighbor, commented that their neighborhood did not typically experience shootings and that the Blackburns did not deserve this. The community was shocked by the incident, as they considered the Blackburns to be good and likable people. Based on Amanda's injuries and the loss of her bank cards and MacBook bag, police initially thought it might have been a robbery. After the murder of Amanda, on the morning of November 10, 2015, the police received multiple emergency calls reporting a series of break-ins near Blackburn's home, which occurred at approximately 5:20 a.m. One victim, a woman, woke up to find her mobile phone, laptop, wallet, keys, and car missing. The sliding glass door to her flat was open. 3 hours later, another woman reported a burglary at her home on Sunnyfield Court. The break-in happened when the burglars smashed the glass door of her porch to gain entry. According to the police report, several valuables were taken, including 4 televisions, a MacBook Pro, a Tiffany pearl necklace, a pink women's sweater, a remote control, a bag of oranges, and bedding. Indianapolis Police Lieutenant Richard stated they were investigating the connection between the murder and other burglaries that occurred in the area that morning. To maintain the confidentiality of the investigation, the police are not releasing many details. However, after collecting images of the suspects from one of the homes that were broken into, they released the images and asked for the public's help in identifying and providing information. Davy is confident in the police's efforts to catch the perpetrators of his wife's murder. Investigators said they have been given unprecedented powers of investigation. They hope promising leads will soon help identify the perpetrators. The main clues used to track down the suspects were a stolen pink sweater, cell phone records, and ATM receipts. Receipts and a sweater were found in a stolen Chrysler Sebring used in the robbery. On November 11th, police impounded a vehicle near Blackburn's home. The receipts in the car had a debit card number that matched Amanda's stolen card. After obtaining a search warrant, investigators viewed ATM camera video, which showed the driver wearing a stolen pink beanie to cover his face. Police identified the suspects through 3 primary methods: DNA testing, surveillance cameras, and witness statements. DNA testing from a sweater confirmed Jalen Watson as one of the suspects. The identification of Jalen was a critical first step in the investigation, according to the report. Police obtained cell phone records for Jalen and his friend, Diana Gordon. Jalen's records were available because he had been paroled after a previous burglary conviction. These records showed that their phones were in the area where the crimes occurred. Additionally, phone records indicated that Diana and Jalen were near the Chase Bank on the day of the murder, where Amanda's debit card was used. To complete the investigation, police reviewed surveillance footage in the area and identified Larry Taylor's phone number, which led to his address. Taylor was the final link in the case. In the following days, a gun was reported found near the Blackburn family home. According to police, a man gave the gun to the Broad Ripple Fire Department, claiming to have found it outside Amanda's home. The gun was later analyzed by forensic experts. After 2 weeks of investigation and working with detectives, police charged Larry Taylor, 18, and Jalen Watson, 21, with the murder of Amanda. A third burglary suspect, Diana Gordon, 24, was arrested for violating her parole but was not charged with a felony because she did not enter the Blackburn home. During questioning, Larry admitted to shooting the victim twice because she jumped on him, and he was afraid of being scratched. After the victim fell, Larry shot her again in the back of the head and watched as she bled to death. The crime occurred when the 3 criminals broke into the Blackburn family home to rob money. They took advantage of the fact that Davy had left the door unlocked before going to exercise. Once inside, they prevented Amanda from approaching by threatening her with a gun, and Larry even fired at her. Jalen and Diana, witnessing the tense situation with Amanda, decided to leave. They had obtained bank cards from a previous robbery and went to an ATM to withdraw money. Initially, they failed to withdraw $500 from one machine, but then succeeded in withdrawing $1,400 from another. This was when the security camera captured their images. They then drove back to the Blackburn house to pick up Larry. During their absence, a fight broke out in the house. Amanda woke up after being beaten and fought back against her attacker, who was assaulting another woman. Larry then placed the stolen credit cards in the car of an accomplice, who used the cards at an ATM at the time of the incident. Upon their return, Larry admitted to shooting Amanda. According to court records, Larry, Jalen, and Diana committed 3 burglaries on November 10th, with the Blackburn home being the third target. In the first incident, they entered a home while the homeowner was sleeping and stole a laptop, a wallet, and a car. Despite discovering security cameras, they left without difficulty. In the second incident, they broke in through a porch window and stole 4 televisions, a laptop, jewelry, a bag of oranges, and a pink sweater. The sweater later helped police identify the group. The report outlines the evidence police gathered against the suspects, based on court documents. The most crucial piece of evidence was Jalen's DNA on the pink sweater, used in the second burglary and later to cover his face when he tried to withdraw cash using Amanda's bank card. Jalen and Diana cooperated with the investigation in exchange for reduced sentences. Larry waived his right to remain silent and admitted to being near the scene of the burglary but claimed he was too confused to remember specifics. The district attorney filed formal charges. Larry faced 13 counts, including the attempted murder of Amanda Blackburn. Jalen was charged with a felony. Both Larry and Jalen faced multiple counts of burglary and robbery. Diana, in custody for a parole violation, was also charged with burglary. A fourth person who knew about the robberies and burglaries but did not participate was interviewed and released. The Indianapolis Police Department's Violent Crimes Unit, along with the Gang Unit and the FBI, worked to arrest Larry. Police Chief Rick Height praised the cooperation that led to the suspect's arrest. Detectives worked tirelessly to investigate homicides in the city. With the assistance of Assistant U.S. Attorney Josh Minkler and District Attorney Terry Curry, justice was served. Because the victim was pregnant, prosecutors considered additional charges related to the fetus. Though the victim's underwear was removed and her shirt was pulled up, there was no evidence to support a rape charge. Larry's first trial in December 2021 was dismissed after a juror leaked information to other jurors. The trial was rescheduled for October 2022, with a more rigorous jury selection process. Over 100 jury candidates filled out a 16-page questionnaire for attorneys to evaluate their ability to render fair verdicts. Larry was sentenced to 86 years in the Indiana State Correctional Institution for the murder of Amanda and related burglary charges. Co-defendants Diana and Jalen pleaded guilty, testified against Larry, and received sentences of 20 to 35 years. Jalen and Larry are currently incarcerated in the Marion County Jail. Under Indiana law, penalties for murder range from 45 to 60 years, with the possibility of life imprisonment or the death penalty in some cases. Prosecutors have requested that Larry be given an additional 20 years in prison because Amanda was pregnant at the time of her murder. Davy, the victim's husband and a pastor, expressed relief that the perpetrator was caught and could no longer harm others. The case has shocked many, including state leaders. Amanda's funeral was held at a Catholic church with more than 2,000 people in attendance, including Governor Mike Pence. The local church has set up a fundraising page to help with Amanda's funeral and medical expenses. Davy expressed hope that the justice system will wisely deal with those who have caused great pain to his family. Surprisingly, he has repeatedly said he forgives his wife's killers. Davy told the press, "I felt relieved when I heard about the arrest. Although I wanted to hate, feel anger, and despair, I chose the path of forgiveness, tolerance, and hope." Amanda's case has attracted widespread attention, being reported in many media outlets both domestically and internationally. After his wife's death, Davy transformed from the role of a grieving husband to a popular blogger. He created a series of podcasts and videos called Nothing Wasted, discussing his experience. Davy appeared regularly on television, talking about his wife's death and the pain he had gone through. However, his behavior was not typical of a grieving person. The tragedy seemed to bring Davy both fame and fortune. The fact that he received insurance money after his wife's death has raised questions about whether forgetting to lock the door on November 10, 2015, was really an accident. On March 2, 2016, Davy bought a spacious new home with 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, and a pool. He also sold the house where his late wife Amanda was murdered. Despite his recent loss, Davy was quite optimistic. In July 2016, he posted a photo of his new home on his blog with the caption, "I'm excited to have a pool party at my new home." Today, Davy is remarried and happily so. He shared, "Everything makes sense. I feel blessed. When I focus on Jesus and look at his wonderful face, everything mundane becomes small in the light of his glory and goodness."